Okay, let's go IG. All right, what's up, everybody? All right, welcome to another session of the Masculinity Pod, where we focus on male masculinity, self-improvement, and purpose. Live out of San Francisco on this beautiful Thursday night. As guys you can see, we have the fellas here tonight, and we got some fellas joining a little bit later, and some ladies joining us a little bit later to add to our conversation. So if you're tuning in for the first time, thank you so much. As always, you guys already know what to do. If you see value in the content, is to smash that like and subscribe button real quick. Don't forget, this is a virtual public show, so a lot of you guys always reach out to me. How do I join the podcast? The best way to join is to come on to YouTube, and the link is in the description of this video. You guys be able to get the link and jump on as a virtual guest from anywhere in the world using your phone. So I do want to extend an invite to you guys if you want to jump on, especially the women as well. If you want to jump on, I know a lot of you ladies will always reach out to me, ask me questions about masculinity, men, how men think and how men behave. This is the perfect show to jump on and ask those questions and get live feedback from some masculine fellas here tonight. So, but yeah, let's get that live chat popping. I see you, Paulo Fessa. Hey, good to see you. Let's get that live chat popping. Let me know what you guys think, and of course, show some support on the live chat. If you do want to drop a share your voice and opinion to get some live feedback or response from the fellas on any topic or questions you guys may have, drop it through a super chat. And we'll be able to respond to you guys. And of course, if you just want to donate to the channel, drop it through a super chat. I'll definitely give you a shout out and a big thank you for always supporting the show. But that's pretty much all my YouTube stuff. Thank you so much. But we'll go right into it. We have a great topic to discuss today. And of course, we'll have some ladies joining within the hour. And they're going to add the female perspective to the topic that we'll be discussing. I'll pass it back to the fellas. Fellas, thank you for always making the time to be part of the Masculine Mind Pod. If you want to go ahead and give yourself a quick intro for everyone out there, and then we'll go right into it. I'll start with you, Damien. Go ahead.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Damien, the official old married guy on the panel, host of the Can I Get Some podcast every Tuesday, 9 o'clock. Yeah, just looking forward. This is going to be a good topic. Looking forward to diving into it.
All right. Always good to have you, Damien. And I'll pass it to you, Jerk. Jerk, go ahead and give yourself a quick intro for everyone out there.
Yeah, I'm sophisticated jerk, like Dame, getting up there in age, been married like 20-something years, procurement executive, coming out of the DMV area. But great topic, Will.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it, fellas. Damien and Jerk, always good to have you on. And appreciate you guys for always tuning in to my live shows. But let's get that live chat popping and let me know what you guys think. But we'll go right into it. All right, so the topic we're going to be discussing today and tonight is, are men still willing to sacrifice themselves to provide for the women and family? This is actually a topic that from a side conversation I was having from one of the female subscribers that do tune into our shows. She was asking why, number one, why a lot of guys are not willing to make that sacrifice to provide for their women and family, but also she talked about why would a man do that? You know, why would a man sacrifice himself to provide for the women and family? Don't men want to be happy? Don't men want to have a easier life where they don't have to put so much burden on themselves to provide for their women and family? So that was the conversation that me and her were having. And I wanted to have that conversation with you guys about, number one, why a lot of men are not willing to make that sacrifice to provide for their women and family, but also for the people who are willing to make that sacrifice. And I know some of you guys on this panel are willing to make that sacrifice to provide for your woman and family. Why are you willing to bear that duty and obligation and sacrifice? So, you know, what's up, Manic? Good to see you, Manic. You know, we were having a conversation, especially today on social media. A lot of the content that we see online is, telling men, be happy, live an easy life. You don't have to do difficult things. So I think there's a lot of men out there trying to pursue happiness and trying to pursue things that's not centered on masculine duty and obligation, especially when it comes to a relationship and family. But oftentimes these guys, when they strive for those things to be happy, and this is what they hear from a lot of women telling them, go live a happy life. But at the same time, when these guys do that, the same women who would tell men to do those things will also complain about and criticize those men for being weak leaders and provider and protectors. So I had to break it down to her. There's a reason why we raise our men traditionally since the beginning of time to be strong, not only from a biological perspective, but also a societal perspective. Men, in order for civilization and society to build a foundation of a stable society, men have to be strong and competent and be able to build and provide. All right. If we remove that, then society often collapses. So that was the basic conversation I was having. So I wanted to pass it back to you guys. I want to hear your feedback on what you guys think about this topic. But we can start off the real simple question with a lot of women were asking, why don't men today? Why aren't men today willing to make that sacrifice to be that provider for the women and family today that traditionally men fulfilled as far as their duty and responsibility to their women and family back in the past? Why a lot of men don't feel that they have to do that anymore? So I'll start with you, Damon. What do you think about? What's your thoughts about that topic?
Yeah, this is a great topic. I think what happened is like there was a thing that men have had for a long time, the desire to build legacies and to have things that are left behind of them when they're gone. I don't think men really don't have that much anymore. I mean, they got social media now. They can say whatever, do whatever, and there's always a record of what they did. It was like your children, the things you built, the way people viewed you, whereas what you left behind. And I think people give a little bit of concern of that, of what they're leaving behind. I think social media, I'm sounding like a broken record. It's like social media propagates that everything is for the now. Everything is for now. You need to make sure that everything you got going on satisfies you and fulfill you for now. That long-term fulfillment is just not a thing that people consider anymore. It's all short-term gratification. So I think guys have the fortitude to go ahead and really put in the work necessary to build stuff and to sacrifice. And transversely, I think women aren't making that a standard, a barrier to entry in order to be with them. They're making it too easy for guys to have access to them. They just need to have a certain amount of status or maybe a little bit of money, and they can gain access to where they had to really make something of themselves in the past to do that. So I think it goes both ways. Women aren't demanding that men are making things of themselves in order to have these long-term relationships, in order to have children with them, and society is telling men you don't have to build. And our building and conquering muscle has atrophied because society's saying that that's unimportant and you should be focused on something else.
All right. Thank you so much. I like that the way you mentioned women don't set that as a standard no more. That's definitely a good one to dissect, especially when the ladies jump on pretty soon. I'll pass it to you, Jerk. Jerk, what do you think about the topic? Why do you think a lot of men, men still willing to sacrifice themselves to provide for their family and for their women, and why a lot of men are not willing to make that sacrifice no more?
All right. Yeah, I think a lot of men just kind of listening to what a lot of people are saying. And, I got a son that's 22 right now. So I think a lot of people are not willing to make that sacrifice because I think the expectations for men nowadays, it just got pushed out of tolerance where it's not even realistic anymore. So I think a lot of guys are assessing it from like the standpoint of like, I can't kill myself to try to accomplish that. It's just not even achievable. So just think about it like this. Technically you should, in many cases back in the past, people would get married younger. And we all know, based on data now, like you're not going to reach your like financial peak, unless you do have outliers and stuff, but till you're like in your like late 30s or mid 40s where you could pretty much pay for everything. So the expectations nowadays, as far as, you know, when you hear a lot of, I'll say females and stuff, they're saying like, hey, you need to come and kind of pay my bills and stuff versus like building with that guy at a young age. So a lot of guys are kind of hearing this. They're like, yeah, I'm good. You know, if I got to take on all that burden, you know, I'm just going to, I might as well just stay by myself. And, you know, I really don't need help just burning through my money. So I think the expectations have never changed. You know, everybody's got cell phone plans, you know, to put on like say like if a guy got married in his 20s, like paying for 2 cars, cell phone plans, internet bill, you can't do it. You know, he's just not at that financial peak. So, I mean, I think people ain't coming to the table with that. I want to build with somebody until we could get to that state where, you know, maybe I could fall back and stay at home and stuff where they're willing to sacrifice on their end. So I think the sacrifice a lot of times is just one-sided mainly for the guys, and a lot of females ain't coming up there like, hey, I'm willing to sacrifice too in this relationship. So it's just like a one lane, I say sacrifice road where guys are just like, you know what, that's just too risky at this point. It's really not safe. And I just can't flat out do it at this peak. You know, it's not like they're weak men. It's just their income is just not there to cover all that, you know, with all the trips that people want to do and all the materialistic stuff that we like, you know, you can't cover it. So I think that's the biggest part where guys are kind of just tapping out based on what they're saying.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it, Jerk. And I'll pass it to you, Manic. Manic, go ahead. What do you think about the topic? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually like what both Damien and the Jerk said. And kind of focusing more on what the Jerk said regarding the economy. I think the economy is just so different. So if you compare the past to the present economy with the whole traditionalism, it's really like comparing apples to oranges. You know, a lot of people will sit up here and say, oh, well, the man provided back then, and, you know, why can't they do it now? A lot of the things that the Jerk said, and I won't regurgitate it, but, you know, all of that holds true. We live in a more complex society where you no longer can you just graduate high school and get a job at the factory and be able to buy a house and, you know, provide for a family with 1 car and, you know, have all these kids that, you know, can contribute in other ways. You know, we're no longer on farmlands. Most people we're in cities. We're way past the Industrial Revolution. So those jobs on the assembly lines and the abundance of jobs are, you know, the jobs are different now. You know, we use our mind way more. And, you know, subsequently, the reality of it is back in the day, women were oppressed. You know, they could not do things without a man. They could not have bank accounts. They could not buy homes. They could not, you know, really function without the, you know, coverage of a man. So it's at a necessity. So it's not like that was even an option. Like in today's society, a smart woman can go out and compete, you know, with a man equally. And I know that I might rub some feminists the wrong way, but, you know, it is what it is. I work with so many professional women, and, you know, some of which are, you know, higher than me. So it's not a thing of like this superiority type of complex anymore. You know, when an HR person hires somebody, they hire the person best fit for the job. And if a woman has better education and better qualifications, then she's going to get it over a man. You know, I like it. But to the Jerk's point, we don't live basic anymore. And I don't even think that, you know, it's the young guys don't. And the only part I would disagree about Dame a little bit is it's not that the young guys don't really care anymore and they just, you know, they're focused on social media. You know, there's people on social media making a lot of money. So it's just like, I think back in the day, it was less on legacy, you know, because I mean, I don't know about y'all, but, you know, my great grandparents didn't leave me shit. You know, my grandparents didn't leave me shit. So it's just like everybody just, you know, they just worked for themselves. But, you know, with all the abundance of information out there, like I'm working a little bit differently. Like I have like personal goals to where I'm trying to like live literally on 50% of my take home and, invest the rest. So it's like, I could go on more trips. I could, travel the world. I could buy that car that I really want. But I don't do it because I'm thinking about what I'm going to leave, to my son. And, my parents, they've done an excellent job, and I know they're going to leave me something, but I want to snowball that and be able to leave that to my child. So I think it just really depends, because even if you look at like the Rockefellers, like somebody had to struggle and put in that work and make that sacrifice. Rockefeller was popping back then, but when he was building his everything, it was a grind. If everybody could do it, everybody would. So I feel like we have enough information in history to see that the people who end up having trust fund kids, somebody in their lineage worked really hard. And, if you do that, I think it's very possible now, people look like me, living a life of luxury. And that's something that, just kind of wasn't really as possible in the past. So
All right.
Can I touch on the economics part real quick? Because just to hash that out a little bit, because I'm 44 and I know Dame could relate to this too, because I was just having this conversation with somebody like a couple days ago, and we were talking about like how things just transition. So I remember, man, in high school, me and my cousin was driving. He was like on E, and he was always broke and shit. So he was like, "Hey, man, I ain't got no gas." So I gave him some money and stuff. But I remember that day stuck out because we was about to run out of gas. So I gave him some money, $5. He could fill up his tank. You know what I'm saying? And this was high school, and then now it's just like, man, you're spending $40 to fill up a regular car and stuff. So, I mean, that's just like a snapshot of what we're dealing with, and just like the time period from my high school to where we're at now. And then, even in high school, I remember internet didn't come out till like my senior year, but it was like dial up. So it's just like, man, like what Manic was outlining, like traditionally, like, you didn't have the $200 cable package. It was just like whatever you plug your TV in with them bullshit antennas, like that's what you watch. You probably had like 4 or 5 channels and stuff. So yeah, when people say traditionally this, it's like, man, like they didn't have but a fraction of the cost that, we're dealing with today. So like those expectations didn't really change for the guys. Actually, they're getting stuck with like more bills when people are coming to them like, hey man, you should be paying for everything. It's like, well, shit, are these expectations going to change then? So that's why I said the sacrifice is never mentioned on the other side. And me and you, Will, we're breaking that down in that, when I came down the weekend and we started tapping into that, because it's just like, hey, we're always telling the guys for some reason, like, hey, what are you willing to sacrifice? But like I said, I only heard like 2 women, I'll say in the 2 years I've been doing podcasts. And it was just like, of course, like I said, Dame and they mentioned it and stuff, how, their household works together, Dame and Paulo. But I think it was just Lovely and Milagros was the only ones I was like, hey, man, I was willing to give up stuff and, sacrifice for the family. So that's the missing component, I think, in a lot of these conversations. Like, hey, what are you willing to give up? If you want this, then what are you going to give up to help that mission out?
I think one of the things that we got to realize, I think we're talking about what we're talking about. And I think the complaint that we're hearing is not necessarily, it's not about ability, it's about desire too. I mean, of course, like I said, I even say like, in major cities, it's very hard for one person to provide all the resources to the other person. It's damn near impossible. That's a rarity, where it used to be like 2 people working was a rarity. This is a rarity that one person can work and pay for all the bills. I think what the thing is like is like, why don't men have the desire to do it if they have the ability to do it? If you don't have the ability to do it, there should be zero expectation for you to do it. But if you have the ability to do it, and it's something that what is that disconnect? Why or if you have the ability, are you still not open to do it? Like, I know guys who like make a shit ton of money, but they still like, no, you're gonna get out of work because we call it, and they have kids. I can understand if you ain't got kids and Well, I could no. If you got kids, if you ain't got kids, yeah, of course, go out and work. You need to be productive. You can't be sitting at home on my dime. But if you got children and stuff like that, it should be like, if you have the ability to do that and you can curate the level of comfort or whatever that's acceptable for the both of you guys, you know, why wouldn't you have the desire to do that if it's historically shown to be better for the overall family dynamic if one person is staying at home? You know, that's my point. You know, I'm not saying, you know, kill yourself and go into debt and drive 3 jobs so your wife can drive a Benz. I'm like, you're a sucker, you do that shit. But if you're just saying, you know, if you're making a decent amount of money, you kind of are frugal and not, you know, ostentatious with your spending and shit, you know, why wouldn't you be like, hey, stay at home because it's better for the kids? If you stay at home.
I got you on that.
Yeah, I just want to respond to that. Like, I definitely get what you're saying, Dame. And I think, just speaking from me personally, when you have, and I won't even just call it awareness, I'll just, you know, just say what it is. Like, you know, I've heard so many women be so disrespectful to, like, oh yeah, he's gonna work and I'm gonna save my money. That's gonna be for trips, or it's gonna be my emergency fund to sneak out to. So it's just like, honestly, you know, I feel like a lot of women kind of just told on themselves. You know, back in the past, you know, these women they probably had the same mentality, but, you know, they were at home, you know, talking amongst the girls and stuff like that. And, like, you know, that's conversation that, you know, men are not even privy to, because by the time we get home from work, you know, the house is clean, you know, the women, they've cleaned, they had their, like, women time watching the kids, whatever. And it was just a different lifestyle to where they probably said the same, you know, terrible shit that we hear on podcasts. It's like, girl, I don't even like him. But
yeah, see, that's, you know, and that's the difference. We're talking about something different. That's somebody, like you said, they don't like their man, or the man is not a masculine man, or they don't respect their man. That's what.
But we don't have the historical records to like validate if the women of the past actually like their man, because
they respected them.
But I mean, did they really, or was it really respect, or was it out of necessity? Yeah.
I mean, it could be potato. It could be like they said that they respect the fact that somebody was keeping them out of a bad situation, and they understand what the difference between women now who say that is, like, they're not willing to give up something in order to, because out of respect for what they're getting that able to stay at home, that traditional value guy who's now women want to do it all. They still want to, like, I want you to pay all the bills, but I want to work and keep my money. And then I want to buy bags and, you know, spend $500 on hair weave and shit like that. They want to do that shit. The women who stay at home weren't doing none of that shit. They were like, look, this person is providing. I got a roof over my head. You know, if somebody come to the door, he's going to be the first one at the door to make sure everything's good. The kids have a role model, what have you. So yeah, I respect that. You know, if he was a drunk or if he beat him, there's some extenuating stuff that was just like fucked up. And yeah, that was not respectable. But I think for the most part, I think wasn't as prevalent as people think. And I think for the most part, the women respected that their man got out, because if we really gonna take it back, especially if the people look like the people on us, the brothers on this panel, they had to deal with some bullshit when they got out into the world. There was some shit coming down on them that they had to deal with on a regular basis to try to make the money and provide for their family. You know, they get paid less, they get, you know, they all kinds of shit they had to go through in order to provide for the family. So there was definitely a higher level of respect there than would be now.
But what I'm kind of getting at is, like, we just don't know, because we didn't put microphones in front of the stay-at-home moms. Like, they could be just as worse. They could be just as bad as the women of today, like, to where nothing has changed, or they could be even worse. Like, if we had a time machine and went back and sat in front of the women that stayed at home, took care of the family, that are like, would be like praised nowadays, and asked them how they feel about their man, you know, some of them might have just seen it as like, this is life.
Okay.
Like,
but Manic, because I could speak to it. Like I said, I grew up around that dynamic, and they were unhappy. That was the reality. A lot of them wasn't happy.
But the husband didn't know. The husband didn't know. They didn't come there. They didn't come here and be. They didn't sit there. There wasn't on social media.
No, but I'm saying, like, as a kid, like, we seen it. You know, if I pull my sisters up here, they were like, that's why my sisters, they went and got careers and stuff. So because they were just like, damn, okay, they don't like that. So, you know, we need to go in this, because we heard it. You know what I'm saying? And so that's one component. A lot of people just they will cite, like, because the divorce rates are pretty high for that group too. That's what I'm saying. If you look across the board, they have a high divorce rate, and one of the things they cite is like lack of fulfillment. So I think a lot of, like I say, like females, like my sisters, they were like, all right, man, you know what? I do probably need to get some fulfillment. And they would like tell them like, hey, go out there and get a career because I don't like my lifestyle. So that was like communicated to like the female family members and stuff, like my sisters and my cousin females. So that's why they push for it. And then I'll say the flip side. Yeah, they definitely was. So then the other flip side is just honestly it's risky. And I could use my own example. Like when my mom and dad got a divorce, he still made sure he would do right for her. But it's just like, unless you make like a real high income, both people are not going to be in a great capacity. And like I was breaking down the will, like when I am helping people with finances, most people are not like, putting enough for two people for retirement. So it's hella risky. So I think guys are kind of looking at it, like, by now, everybody knows a guy that got impacted by a divorce to a certain degree. And then, so it's like, if you see that personally versus like just hearing it, you're like, maybe I'm going to take a different approach because I don't want to be in them shoes. So I think that's what tends to happen a lot more than, the other things. So I think like, that's why like a lot of guys, like you said, Will, like, even if they might have the resources and stuff, they're just like the risk. Plus, maybe I seen like some family members like complain about it. And also, I'll say the other element to that is, me personally, like me and my wife, we, like I said, both work. A lot of people I work with, have that same dynamic where the man and the female work. And then, they just find, like I say, flexible jobs where you can accommodate it. Like me and my wife never missed the event for my child's school. So it's just like, he's in college. My sisters, they do the same thing where kids are at a high level. So we have enough examples of people that do it properly also, where I don't think it's that much of a stigma no more, where it's just like, hey, this is the best way to go. Because there's a lot of people that, like I said, with dual incomes that work with us, like Manny could tell you that, they're sending their kids to the best private schools in the Arlington area and stuff like that. So like I said, there's just so many cases and stuff that I think people got a little more options now and they're comfortable with it, where they could like, hey, if we get remote jobs or we got flexible hours, we can make this work.
And I just want to say just one last thing. Like, we really don't know. We can only speculate. And I think it would be like disingenuous to just assume that, everybody wants the fairy tale that like, my grandparents and great grandparents loved each other and they had a good lifestyle relationship where my grandfather respected my grandmother and my grandmother respected my grandfather and greats and so forth. But the reality is, laws were very different back then, and you want to talk about DV, like you can just look how the laws were set up. Like, if something happens in the household and the cop has to come and show up, cop's going to be like, hey, you guys need to calm down, and the cop's leaving. That's not happening in today's society. So there's a lot of things that, we try to just put over the cloak. Like, it was just perfect back then. It wasn't. There was a lot of issues. And, too bad we don't have a time machine or people. It'd be hard to even talk to older people and ask them about it because, people are not going to say that like, yeah, the wife I married, she really wasn't a piece of shit and I didn't really like her like that. And she didn't respect me. I kind of just got her because I knew her dad and her dad really liked me and pretty much this is the guy courting you, this is who you got to go with, and when you sleep with him, that's your husband. Like,
Manny, to piggyback off what you're saying, my grandparents could have stand each other. Like when me and my wife would go visit them, man, they couldn't even talk about volleyball without cussing each other out. Because they literally was with each other for like necessity. Yeah. I'm telling you, man, my wife, I'll stay there for like 10 minutes. I couldn't take them. She'd be like, man, we drove like an hour away to come visit. I was like, man, they arguing about volleyball in there. That's how bad like they could have stand each other.
Most people would not say that because they don't want to seem bad. They don't want to, be real.
So then are we making an argument for happiness?
No, it's not about.
So the reason why I'm asking that question is that we seem to be a little bit off-puttish towards the idea of traditional and cultural sort of practices of what relationships were. From a lot of our conversation, we've always understood it as duty and responsibility, all things considered. The love was a bonus, the happiness was a bonus, but a vast majority of those cultures, and I'm not talking about ethnic cultural practices around relationship, especially when it comes to marriage, were solely around duty and responsibility. And I want to push back on a couple of things. The one is we don't have data. We actually do. We have the cultural practices of almost damn near every race on this planet, and we can see in their practices that a vast majority of them practice patriarchal structures. And then when we look at relationships, we look at less separation in that matter, and we look at, and I think Damien presented the argument of history in terms of what was the ideal sort of structure for a family, and it was the two household where the man went out and the woman stayed in. So we do have data sets. It just doesn't look in the sense of were they happy, because that wasn't measured, and I don't think that's a good measure anyway, even in today's world. For example, women use that as a reason of excuse of why they're leaving. So I don't want to make a case for women leaving marriages, past, present, and future, in terms of making an argument for the happiness factor.
But nobody mentioned happiness. But we can't sit here and act like traditional marriages don't have divorces. That's what I'm saying. You guys got to look at the data on that flip side also. That's what I'm saying. It's pretty high across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Huh? Oh, go ahead.
So the data for less divorces usually settles in the lowest rate. Usually settles in religious sort of couples, and they tend to be a little bit more conservative. So there's an argument to be made for traditionalism, but it's almost like a hybrid. We can't go back to the tradition, even though, for example, my household is 100% me financial provider. That's not tradition. And the reason for that is my wife is out in the world doing a lot of things, but she's not earning an income. But I follow principles like we all discuss. So I don't think I'm making a case for either. What I'm trying to hold the point to is the idea of happiness, because I think it was mentioned before when it was pushed back against Dame is but were they happy? So that's the argument I'm trying to make here.
Yeah. And Apollo, I agree with you on that part. But the thing is, when you factor in options, what were women's options back then? What could they do?
None.
Could they file for divorce? They couldn't do shit. So it's just like, with taking that option away, there should have been no divorces back then. Everybody should have just been understanding duty, but that's not the case.
Well, it was divorce, but it just one of those things that if we didn't avail yourself, it was stigmatized if you got a divorce back in the day. If you got divorced, you were seen as a failure. The difference was people saw you individually as a failure. Let me finish. Let me land it here. People didn't see the mechanism of marriage wasn't a failure. You individually failed marriage. Now it's the other way around. Mm-hmm. It's like marriage failed you as opposed to you individually failed marriage. Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing that switched over time. Like people believe that the mechanism marriage or the institution, as to say, marriage, and not the individuals anymore.
And it wasn't it wasn't so much law. We have to remember that Christianity had a big influence in how it was viewed. If you look at Catholicism, a big part of their ideology around sin is that if you were to separate from your husband, you were seen as you were sinning, right? So I don't know why I'm making this argument, but I just want to make sure that we understand it's more religion. So when we've taken out the marriage from its religious sort of connotation, especially in the West, it sort of started a lot of breakdown, which is what we're seeing now. But the influence was highly on the religious side rather than law. I think law came to back it at a much later stage.
Yeah, if you were fighting with your wife, you went to your pastor, your preacher. You didn't go to a lawyer or a marriage counselor.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I definitely think that's the cornerstone for a lot of stuff, that the success. But like, I like what you guys are saying, like as far as the sacrifice and stuff. But I think you could do that in multiple different, ways and stuff nowadays, where it's just like if you still have that, mindset for sacrifice and responsibility, you could do it in a different way than versus like all the basic way we probably did it in the past, and that's where I think people are like growing in different areas and they do understand. But I do agree with you guys. Happiness is like definitely a bad issue unless you could quantify it. Like you get happy out of seeing your family like grow or, you know, the sacrifices you make, that won't be an issue at that point. But I just think like nowadays, regardless, whatever you kind of choose, there's just so many like unhappy people. And that's, I think, the issue that like I said, a lot of people are running into.
Yeah, I think what's happening again is like men don't value wives, and women don't value husbands. They don't value them like they used to. They don't have any reverence for the wife, the title of wife or the title of husband. It's just something that's expected, not something you aspire to. It was something I used to inspire to back in the day. Oh, I can't wait. I want to be a husband. I want to be a father. I want to be a provider, or I want to be a wife. I want to be a mother. I want to be a nurturer. It used to be things, it was aspirational. Now it's just like something that just happens to you. You know, it's just like, oh, we've been together for 5 years. I think we need to get married. Or, oh my God, I'm pregnant. You know, now I got to be a mother. Or, oh my gosh, she got pregnant. Now I got to be a father. You know, it's one of those things. It's nothing that's aspirational anymore, where you put in work to make sure it's successful. Now you just kind of deal with it, as opposed to aspiring to it. And I think that's, if people had a lot more reverence for what a spouse, and since we're talking about, you know, the subject is why men don't have a desire to like provide and or to put themselves out or sacrifice themselves, is because I don't think they'd have reverence for the title of wife anymore. They don't want to appreciate what goes into being being a successful wife to a man.
All right, thank you, fellas. Let me just read some good shout out to the live chat real quick. PAF, hey, good to see you in the live chat. I appreciate you guys. Lord Punisher, Gas Mask, a lot of you guys are tuning in. Ashley, hey, good to see you, Ashley, in the live chat. I know you're gonna be joining us with the ladies pretty soon. Phil, always good to see you, Phil, in the live chat. But let's get that live chat active. Let me know what you guys think. We have a great discussion. We got the fellas here tonight, the Masculine Mind, and we're gonna have a great discussion on the topic as always. I just wanted to, before we move on to the next part, I just want to push back on two things that Manic said. Manic, you said about, you know, I know you talked about the women being oppressed back in the day, right? Because they didn't have bank accounts and they didn't have all these things that men did. I just wanted to add on that men were also oppressed as well. The average guy was also oppressed as well. There was a lot of things that
That's a good point.
there's a lot of things that the men, especially the average guy, that we had to do things that was against our will. Like if your noble wanted to go to war for whatever reason he wanted, you had to go to war and die. There was no option. So
If you're what?
if the
Noble.
if the noble, the ruler, the king wanted to go to war, you had to go to war. There was no option.
Oh, I wasn't talking that far back. I wasn't talking about medieval times. I'm talking
okay.
about like
No,
early.
yeah.
I'm talking about like the 50s.
50s.
Yeah.
But like I said before, if you look like us on this panel, there was a significant amount of repression going on in the United
for
States
sure.
at that
Yeah,
time.
no, that's a good point.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
I know a lot of
But
times.
even with that level of oppression, you know, I mean, we were making it work. You know, it wasn't a great lifestyle for sure, but you know, people had families and stuff like that. And I don't want to get into the whole like, oh, until social welfare came, you know, because that's a whole different topic. But
Yeah. but even like the 50s, even when we had the war, right? The average guy had to go to war when we got drafted, right? You had to go unless you had money, unless you were rich, you can pay it off. But when we went to the war with was it Vietnam? Was it right? That's when we did the draft.
Korea, Vietnam,
Yeah,
any of them.
Every young guy had to go against his will, like even if you didn't want to go. So a lot of times
for sure.
when we had the conversation about women being oppressed because they didn't have all these things, you know, the men the average guy was also oppressed as well. But we just had to do what we had to do.
I mean, is it oppression, or is it just that's the standard of society? And even with us having to go to war and whatnot, we're still able to provide for a household. So I don't know if that's like a mute or neutral point.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to make that same argument when I heard the oppression part. Oppression has always been the lens of future generations. At times when practices in cultural sort of practice in society has sort of unfold in its present, it's not, I don't think there's ever been a point where in present a lot of the practices that society had were overlooked upon as oppression. I think that's a new term that we've coined because we looked at the past and we base it on what is readily available for us in terms of rights, in terms of freedom, and then we make that sort of judgment. I always found it very difficult to have a conversation where we take a morality stance in terms of reviewing past. So I was going to make that argument to you, Manic, but it's great that you brought it forward for Will and Sid. So I agree on that point.
Okay. Yeah, and then the other thing I just wanted to respond to Manic. I know you talked about legacy, about how a lot of guys, their fathers didn't leave them shit, right?
Yeah.
I think when it comes to legacy, oftentimes I think when we talk about legacy, we often think about on like a more financial terms where you leave money behind. But I think legacy for me is just a man providing, protecting, just laying the groundwork for the future generation. And I think, Damon, you brought up an example a long time in the previous podcast where there was a guy working as a janitor at a college to give his kids free college, right? And he made the sacrifice to sacrifice himself to put all his kids in college. And he laid the groundwork for them to give them a better situation and a better legacy for their future. So I think there's a lot of guys, they may not have a lot of money, but they laid the groundwork for their future kids to put themselves in a better situation. And I think there's countless examples, especially men in the past who worked the shitty jobs just to put their family through and to give their kids a better situation. Because I think sometimes as parents, you have to use what you got, and you got to do what you have to do. My dad, as far as he was a security officer at an airport, and that's as far as he did. But he made sure that we had food and a roof over our head. But I think he gave me the better opportunity to go and learn more skills and better education. I can take that and build on that. And I think oftentimes when we talk about legacy, it's not really, most of the time it's only the 1% who get to leave behind the wealth and the name. But there are a lot of men out there working every single day to lay the groundwork for the second or third generation. That's going to be that one child, which is you, Manic, to take it to the next level. Somebody in the family would have to take it to the next level, but somebody has to lay the groundwork first to put themselves in that opportunity. But I think there's a lot of guys that did that, but oftentimes it wasn't based on the economics and leaving behind a big name, But I do agree there's a lot of guys who didn't leave shit because they made bad decisions. But I think there's a lot of good men out there just working normal jobs and just making sure that, all I can do is give this opportunity to put my kids through school, make sure they have a roof over their head. And I think my kid will have a better education, better opportunity that they never had back in the day, which I believe for today's generation of men, there's no excuse because we have all the resources. We have the internet. There's literally no excuse for us as the men being born in today's generation to take it to the next level. I do understand for a lot of men in the 50s, the 40s, the 30s who went through war, like they went through a lot of struggles in their life, but they still found a way to make it work and have a family and have kids. But but for today's men, there's no reason why you don't leave something behind for your kids because we have all the resources.
Actually, there is a reason, and I can tell you the reason. We've had this conversation previously where we have to recognize whether we're the sacrificial lamb in part of this cogwheel when we look at legacy, right? And what you're talking about is that men are no longer looking at it and saying, shit, I might have to be the sacrificial lamb. I might not get to enjoy the riches and fullness of life because my parents didn't leave it to me. So I have to do that for my children. And a lot of men are looking at that deal and going, why the fuck should I do that?
Yeah.
When I can still survive on the base, on the bare minimum, and just go through life enjoying it for whatever it is, and sort of clock out whenever the time comes. So there is an excuse because comfortability of the modern world has earned them that ability to survive without having to put all of that. If we compare to our predecessors, that was driven into the culture of men, to the standard of men. Before you leave, you need to ensure that you build a strong foundation for your offsprings. And it's sort of that has weighed over time, and that foundation has sort of eroded. So now the case is being made in that way. What I would like to provide a argument to that excuse is that when we look at quality of life, everything that has come out in order to support better quality of life comes from how hard you put in. Okay, let me rephrase that. It comes from the satisfaction you get out of what you put in. So when we look at the depression sort of epidemic that's working its way through men, a lot more men are more depressed now, and they're wondering why. And part of the reason for that is no one looks at a bigger picture no more. No one has a plan to put in place how they're going to move forward in life and what they're going to achieve. The linear sort of outlook that our forefathers had was that in order to move through life, I have to go through some level of education, whether that's through academia or whether through whatever it is that's looked at as progression in my childhood. Get to a point where I now get a job, get married, buy a house, have children, and then sort of retire at an age. That was quite linear, and that's what most people lived up to. Now we've provided so much option to the average man and woman that they look at, oh, maybe I can deviate from the path a little bit longer. Maybe I can deviate from that. And now we're at a very difficult time where we're over a certain threshold and we no longer can afford what was sort of the prior steps, which is why we have a lot of women sort of arguing against, oh, I deserve the best at the age of 45. You've passed that threshold, and every generations of women that's come before you have passed that threshold and never looked at it that way. What makes you think that you're different? Your biology doesn't agree with you. And the same for men. This is why I make an argument that men should try and have children younger. Reason for that is children require your vigor as a young man and your youth. And as you progress, if you have more children, this is why children have different behaviors, that as you age, you learn to look at life a very little bit different, but your older should always have the vigor of a young man. So my apologies for the
we kind of disagree on that, Paula Pessa. I don't think you should have them super young, because I feel like, yes, you'll have the energy and the vigor, and they can see you doing a lot of things that'll probably take we could utilize that energy and that vigor, but I think you need to develop that discipline, and you need to have some type of maturity level to where you're like, okay, I've done those reckless things, because you still kind of, if the children are what's keeping you from being reckless, then you're still reckless. If you haven't developed it out of that, or matured out of that, or developed a foundation of work and success and appreciation for things like that, because I think it's harder. You know what? Maybe it could have been like that years ago. It could have been more like that. I'll give you that. But now with all of these other stimuli that's like telling you can have more, you deserve more, you should have this, you should have that, you need more shit, you need more time, you need more sex, you need more this, everything telling you that, it's really hard for people to be mature enough to like weed through that shit to develop a strategy young that's going to drive them for long-term success. I think there's just so many things that's just like could be impediments to that. I think you got to do some shit. I think you got to experience some shit. I think you got to get through some shit in order to, because that's what you want really apart. Like, I'm going to be able to tell my kids when these things come and I have some frame of reference. I'll be like, you know what? I've experienced something similar. Maybe not exactly to that point, but I've and I can relate to that. And here's how I got through it. And here's how I stayed away from it. And here's, you that maturity level and that experience level is going to help you really like leave. Like I said, that's going to be a part of the legacy you leave your kids. I think my dad, the same way, like, I don't want to make this a long thing either, is that he was reckless and stuff like that. Like, he'll get with his old friends and they'll talk about how my dad was a former boxer. Then he became a garbage man. Then he became a janitor. How he used to fight everybody at the club. Like, he'd go to the bar and get into fights all the time. They'd be like, yeah, your stepdad, he was always in the fights, and he had to mature. And I couldn't see that. Look at that. It's like, because I matured out of that. I realized that, there's certain things I need to do that type of mentality would not serve well as a role model for boys, So I think I'm of the vein of go through your shit, experience your shit, but then use that as fuel to develop and who you really need to be for long term, because if you want more than just, you know, some good memories in the old folk home, you really want people coming to see. You want a legacy that people can acknowledge and see. You need to have that time between that to like really mature and develop yourself.
Real quick, I'm kind of with Paulo on this, man. I think it's a young. I think you, yeah, I think you should have them younger, man. I get what Dame is saying, because that does help. But it's the energy levels, and I agree. I think what we're kind of missing sometimes, because even with the earlier, like, we're back and forth, and that's why I always hone in. Regardless what you decide to do, it really boils down to the individuals. That's why I'm saying I don't think it really makes a difference what you do if you're rooted in the right stuff. Because like when you're younger, and if you're truly like a good person, you believe in legacy, something should just click on in you where it's like, my family is not going to struggle. If I got to work like 2 to 3 jobs, you know, I'm going to do it. It might be a little bit more of a struggle, but man, I'm going to be honest. If I had a kid right now at my age, I'm paying that kid off. Like, hey, man, here's some money. Like, I couldn't do it, man. So I'm glad I had him earlier.
I'm 49 chasing after a 6 years old. I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? I'm like, what? You know, I get it. I get that part of it. But that 6-year-old, I'm at the age where that 6-year-old can go to a really good school, live in a nice house, in a safe neighborhood, to where there's no external things that could prevent him from possibly living his best life. As much as I can mitigate any of those roadblocks for him. But I know those kind of things build character. But I just feel like I couldn't do that if I would have had him 20 years ago. I don't feel like I could have done as what I'm available to provide for him now.
I agree.
Great. I disagree with the idea, and I disagree from this. I disagree from this perspective. Right, I'm the sacrificial lamb. My father left me his willpower. My biological father left me his brain. My involvement with both was very different. Now, I had to go through my shit. My son doesn't require that because he has me. You know, there's when we look at the culture of mentorship, we see that as a sort of cost benefit to a lot of people. I don't agree with you have to go through your shit if you have the availability to either seek mentorship or seek people of good character and strong character to sort of guide you through that step. What I think we're denying here is how extraordinarily lucky we all have been if we went through our shit. The amount of people that I would guarantee you who would have gone through the same experience wouldn't have come out the other side either alive or in the same position as we are now. So I don't want to put the luck factor to my son per se. And when I think about these conversations, I think about my son. You don't have to run through, you know, women at the age that I did in order to learn the same things that I've learned. I can put you through sports. I can coach you through martial art. I can provide all these things that are in somewhat a control level of chaos rather than what I had to go through. So that's where I disagree. The young thing is that the behavior that we pass on to our children is not through our own teaching, but it's also through genetics. So that's where I'm sort of leaning of why you should have them young. I want to pass the good things to who is supposedly the leader of the next generations of my children. And I want to pass on the idea that if I'm disciplined at this very young age and I'm somewhat hostile to very soft shit, I want to pass that on to the elders of who I'm going to bear as children. And throughout time, as I get softer with age and I become a little bit more wise, which is tend to be what we see in children as they develop, is that your oldest is often the most reserved, your middle is somewhat the wild child, and then your youngest is the outlier. Right, so that's where I'm coming from, and just my sort of analysis of why people should at least endeavor to have them young. But I'm not denying the fact that what you're saying is extremely important too. You shouldn't just be reckless and put it in just anybody. You have to have the very thing that we're talking about. You have to have a standard, and you have to practice them. Because running into a woman and getting her pregnant without any of these things give you no level of control in terms of your life moving forward. So I guess we agree. I just look at it from a younger perspective.
So Paulo,
maybe I'm just projecting because I had kids older.
Paulo,
I'm trying to defend my situation.
I just think there's no perfect time to do it, honestly, man.
Exactly.
But I think if you're rooted in something, it's you know you're gonna get the job done. So that's the reality.
So,
go ahead, man.
Paulo, the 19-year-old version of you, Is that the same version of you now?
Of course.
Absolutely not in terms of wisdom,
Yeah.
but I had some great foundation at that age.
Yeah. And the experiences though, in applying the foundation and your ethics and your moral and, you know, all of those values that you have and putting it into the world and like seeing the results, because you don't always see the results, especially when you're young. You kind of have to, you know, execute to get the outcomes. So, you know, I would definitely, I mean, I honestly, I agree with, you know, everybody's different, right? Some people really have to go through things to like change and shape their values. Some people just, you know, grew up in a terrible environment. I would advise against them having kids at all early. However, people can change and they can level up and get into different circles and crowds. So I would argue Dame's point, you know, when you're older and you have more wisdom, that will be a much better time because you have the not only the knowledge and wisdom, if you've been executing, you would have the stability as well. So yeah, you might not be able to have the rigor and vigor to run around and chase them all the time, but you know, ain't nothing for Dame to get a basketball coach, you know, a personalized, specialized trainer one-on-one if, you know, his kids are like, hey, I want to take basketball to the next level. And that's just something you can't do as a young man. You can step in and do it yourself, but then you know, we all have 24 hours in the day. And or are you going to be able to be fully that basketball professional coach for your kid and still, you know, tackle your husband duties and your provider duties? And I mean, there's people who do it all, but I'm not saying it can't be done, but you'll be stretched a lot more thin versus, you know, dealing with a professional who's like
Follow
focused
real
on training.
quick.
Let me qualify. What age? What age are we talking about kids? Because we never qualified that. How many? How many age?
And to that I say, I welcome the challenge, and I will be there, and I'll stand tall when I do it all.
All right, Paul Professor, what age are we? We talking about. We might be on the same page. What age are we talking? When you say young, when you say young, what age are you referring to? What range?
I think at 22 you should be at a stage where you're ready as a young man. That comes from the idea that you have either gone through your shit or you've been walked through life with someone of very strong character or stature. Yeah. At 24, I think 22 to 24 you should have your first child. But again, you cannot take these elements of standards away from it. You cannot just be reckless. But 22 to 24 is my perspective.
Yeah, we disagree.
That's fine. All right. Look, again, my bias is that I was out in the world when my mother died. So, you know, at the age of 6, I was out with the big boys then, and I wanted to run in with them. You know, the pressure of being the youngest kid in a village full of 16 or 18-year-old sort of guys gave me the pressure of I needed to be just like them at the age of 8, 9, 10. Right, so I do concede to the fact that my experience, of however unique it has been, has influenced my bias towards that.
So, Paulo, you're just saying since we were able to do it at a young age, we're just amazing specimen of men? Is that the summary I got from that, me and you?
Absolutely, we are.
Appreciate you, Paulo. Will give us a check mark for the win.
You're the prototype.
You got a shout out.
All right, well, you gotta get somebody pregnant now. Or it's too late.
All right, thank you, Philip, for the great discussion to start off the podcast. But ladies, thank you so much for jumping on. Mara, good to see you. Anissa, good to see you. Ashley,
hey.
Good to see you guys. How are you guys feeling tonight?
Hey, ladies.
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay.
All right, so just make sure that the audio is good, the video is good. But ladies, thank you for jumping on, and there we go. What's up, Itaisa?
Hey.
How's everything from the forest?
It's cool. It's nice. Getting lots of oxygen, that's for sure.
All right, good that. Thank you so much for jumping on and making the time. But ladies, yeah, let's just go right into it. We're just talking about sacrifice and obligation and duty. That's something that we see that a lot of men are lacking today when it comes to their responsibilities and duties in their relationships and their family and their children. But I want to hear from the female perspective. To two questions. A, do you prefer a man to be a provider protector that wants that duty? There are men out there who want to do it. There are men out there that they see the honor in providing and protecting for their women and their children. You guys gave us the blessing of gifting us with children. There's a lot of men that feel that their gift is to give you guys a good quality life. All right, so that's the first question. Is that the type of men you're looking for? And number two, why do you think that today's generation of men don't feel the need to make those sacrifices anymore? Don't feel the need to fulfill that duty and obligation to their women and to their family? I would like to. So those are two questions. Is that a type of man you're looking for? And if yes, why do you think a lot of men out there are not willing to take that role? And Joanna just joined. Hey, Joanna.
Hi, sorry, I'm late.
Joanna.
Are you good? You're good. Good to have you back again. Appreciate you. But let me give a shout out real quick to the ladies real quick. All right, ladies, thank you so much. We have a full panel tonight. Appreciate you guys watching on the show. But we're gonna have a great topic of discussion. But I'll start with you, Mara. Is that the type of man you're looking for? And from your observation, why do you think a lot of men out there are not willing to step up in that role and duty and obligation?
Yeah, so definitely that's what I'm looking for, is a provider and a protector, for sure. That just resonates with like my faith values and just what I feel like is regular and normal. So yes, to answer that question pretty briefly. Two, I would say what's lacking with men or just young boys is there's no real rite of passage, I feel like, anymore. So you have a lot of young boys who are just not disciplined, or there's very little they can do now outside of just sports. Like there's not really any type of, unless they're going to church or they're doing something where they could have those values instilled in them, like Boy Scouts or something. A lot of families I've noticed, especially since I work with kids, a lot of them don't care to shape a young boy. Like I just have not seen that. I think that was very popular maybe 20, 30 years ago. But right now it's just kind of like, it's very, it's just very feminized. I think a lot of parents are feminizing their boys and they're not really taking any accountability for it. And the dads are not really doing anything and they're not stepping up, it's just very, I think some of the dads are kind of vacant, even though they're physically there.
All right. Thank you so much, Mara. I appreciate that. We'll keep it moving. I'll pass it to you, Anissa.
Yeah, I do agree. Like I want a man who's a provider and protector. And I kind of agree with Mara on the aspect that boys nowadays, they don't have good mentorship pretty much. So they don't have those, usually they come from single mother households nowadays. So they're lacking that male discipline in helping them get to that next level. And then also it's like a twofold thing, because when they get a little bit older, pornography is just so it's everywhere. So it kind of removes that aspect of men looking for people to provide or protect, because they don't kind of see that in their day-to-day lives, if that makes sense. It takes them away from wanting to provide and protect, because sex is just so easily accessible everywhere now that they just don't feel the need to.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that, Anissa. I'll pass it to Ashley. Good to see you again, Ashley. But what's your response? Is that the type of men you're looking for? Also, why do you think a lot of men are not stepping up into that role?
Good to see you too. Yes, I do want a provider. However, I agree with what they're saying, but I also, what was I about to say? The way that things are definitely portrayed on the internet these days is, it seems like most women want to be, and I actually can attest to this because I'm a single mother, and for the longest I was like, I don't want a man to take care of me. I want to be independent and I don't want anybody telling me what to do and all of that. And that's what a lot of women are putting out there these days. So why are the men going to feel like they should provide when that's what the women are putting out? So I don't know. that's where I'm at with it.
All right. I mean, that's a fair point. That's a fair assessment. All right. Thank you so much, Ashley. Daisa, what do you think? Is that the type of man you're looking for? And also, why do you think a lot of guys are not really stepping into that role?
Yeah, definitely agree with the ladies. And also, protector provider is definitely what I'm looking for. But for the reason why men don't step up, I think a lot of what society preaches is to program young men to be less masculine and to be less of a leader. And that's just starting with like childhood, lack of a father figure, like lack of a role model, lack of a mentor. And I think the very identity of masculinity is just being attacked. And, you know, I've heard like many times, like from households where a lot of the masculine qualities are discouraged, you know, and that's just what I've seen, at least. So I think a lot of men just are lacking that and are also discouraged from being masculine in general by the public. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. And Joanna, good to see you again. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Because you got a lot of you got a specific expertise that I'm curious. So yeah, what do you think? I know just the question is, are you looking for a man that wants to do that for you? He wants to provide or protect his woman, and also why do you think a lot of men are unwilling to step into that role today?
Well, I've thought about this a lot actually the last week or so, just since I was on the show last, and really looking to identify exactly what protector provider means to people.
Yeah.
Because I think we throw around these words very loosely and we dilute words in our culture today. And I think that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think that relationships today call for a more evolved approach. And I think that because we have a surge of women no longer needing to financially depend on men, that it's also shaking up the roles in which people play. And most households are dual income earning households. So then you have to ask, like, what is providing? What does that actually mean? And what are you looking for someone to provide for you? And what does that look like in relationship when you're trying to de-risk your role in the relationship as a woman? Because women are at risk when they step into relationship. And if their definition of being provided for has a lot to do with financial provision, where they are homemakers, what they need to know is that they are signing a prenup with the government when they sign that marriage contract, and that their rights can be changed at any time depending on who lawmakers are. And that's deeply going to impact how they're able to fend for themselves if the relationship doesn't work out. So I do think that as far as like what I'm looking for in a relationship is much more evolved. It's much more of like we're negotiating the roles that we're playing in each other's lives. And depending on the strengths of the partner that I'm with, and that's depending on my strengths, we're able to marry those together versus I'm this, you're that, and this is the static roles that we're playing. Because I also think life happens, and one role that you play at the beginning isn't the role that you play in the middle, because when you have kids, life gets complicated. I don't think it's this binary approach that we see to relationships. It's like, everybody knows when you have kids, it's like all of a sudden you're at soccer practices 5 nights a week and you've got 3 kids going in different directions. And I just don't think that this conversation is as small as saying protector provider and that's it. It's like, it has to be much more nuanced than that. And I just don't look for it to be that simplistic.
Okay. And then also from your observation, Joanna, why do you think a lot of guys don't want to do that no more?
I don't think men have had to do this role yet, actually. Like, I think that it's changed. Women haven't had a bank account since, we started in 1974, so it's like, this is very new, actually, as relationships have evolved and as women have become more financially independent. it's something that we really haven't seen before as far as what men are having and being required to show up for in relationship, and also having to bring more emotional availability to the relationship. I think for women to stay, at least that's what I see as a divorce negotiator, is that women just, if they can't get their emotional needs met, that's a pretty big part of the relationship. So I just think like, yes, are there things missing in our childhoods and with trauma? Absolutely. Like, I think we all have that, that we have to overcome in our lives. But I don't think that's the only reason why men are struggling in relationship. I just really think this is a role they haven't had to play yet. And this is just new. Like, what are we going to do now that life has happened, that life has changed, that culture has changed, society has changed? We live in a postmodern era, which means everything has been deconstructed down to relationship values, marriage, relationship types, belief systems, like all of that's being deconstructed in people's lives as they do their own personal growth. So I think it's new.
All right. Yeah, I can agree. So thank you so much, Joanna, for sharing. Thank you, ladies, for your responses. Let me just pass it back to the fellas. Fellas, any response you want to respond to what was being said? Go ahead.
Just got a real quick question. Joanna, what do you do for a living?
You didn't remember?
I help women negotiate their divorces and prenups.
Oh, okay. I knew she was very smart because of just the way that she was talking. I agreed with pretty much everything you said, with the exception of men not really having the risk in the relationships. But I'll yield the floor at that.
I think they do have risk, actually. I do think men have risk. I just think if the role, like if we're defining women as stay-at-home moms, right? Like if that's the role, like you're going to stay at home, you're going to be the homemaker. There is so much inherent risk that comes with like suppressing your income earning potential, and income earning potential compounds over time. Money is a resource, just like food, just like water. And without it, it's hard to survive. So I think it's really important to recognize that there is significant risk on moms staying home. But yes, men absolutely do take on risk in relationship as well. I'm glad that you said that.
I would like to jump in there real quick. I want to ask a question. I want to go like to the ladies one more time. And let's eliminate the fear factor of it. Let's eliminate that the risk factor of it. Whether you met a guy, he's amazing, he loves the shit out of you. The sun and moon stars rises off your dirty underwear. What you call it? If he said, "Hey, would you be agreeable to staying home and raising the children?" Because I think just historically that is the best family dynamic for success, long-term success for their children. And I will dedicate myself to providing you with a comfortable life. Yeah, you may not be able to have a Mercedes, you may have a nice little Honda, but that Honda is going to be get you where you need to go. It's going to be safe and affordable, what have you. Would you be agreeable to that if the risk? Because I understand we have these conversations with women a lot, and if they haven't seen it or they hear about it going bad, then they don't trust it. So it's not like they're like, "Oh no, I could never give up my career or what have you like that," because there are too many bad stories of women going bad. I'm just going to go, Mara, if that was the case, would you be agreeable to that? Be like, "Hey, stay at home with the kids. I'm going to provide for you," and just don't think about, just don't make risk the fear. Take the fear factor out of it. Would you be agreeable to that situation?
Yeah, I totally would. I mean, that's kind of how I've been envisioning it. Like, if he's like, "I want you to be a housewife, forget the kids. Like, you just want to be a housewife. I want to take care of you." I'd be an idiot to say no. That's how I feel.
You got to have some kids. There's no housewife.
No, I would be a housewife with no kids. No, I'd be a housewife with no kids.
You'd just be a woman of leisure. I get it.
Yeah, straight up.
I just want to take it back where your job was back in the day when your job was no job. But I'm just saying, let's just make this real short because I don't want to make it a long thing that takes up a bunch of Will's time. So, Nisa, would you agree? Would you be agreeable to that situation?
Do I have an allowance?
Well, I mean, he's taking care of everything. I mean, it's just like if you need, there's money there for you to do whatever you got to do. If you're going to get your hair done and stuff like that, there's money there to do that. But you've got to be taking care of the kids. Their needs got to be taken care of. They got to be, things like that. Just what we consider traditional, whatever. You got to basically be the manager of the home, the facilitator of everything as far as like kids and stuff like that. Would you agree to that situation?
Yeah, I would agree to it. Yeah.
All right. What about you, Nicole? I mean, Ashley. Sorry. It's Bucky in there. Go ahead.
Yes,
Ashley.
I definitely would as well.
All right, Tyson.
I don't see why not.
Yeah, and I'm even ask you, Joanna, would you agree to that?
No.
Yes, and that's why. And I'm saying, and this is from talking to all these. When we talk to hundreds of women, is like women would love that to be. Would love that. I think more women than not would like to be in that situation. It's just the fear prevents them of thinking it's a possibility. It's like it's real or what have you. It's like, oh, there's no way I can really do that or what have you. So they don't set the standard of men to reach the level to where they can do that. They don't make that a barrier to entry in order to date them or to have access to them or to marry them or what have you. So they just like men get an easy way out because that fear is keeping them from really going for or trying to structure their life around something that a lot of women seem to want. Yes, I gotta get you don't want to jump out a airplane without a parachute. I get that. So you gotta have that.
But Dame, real quick, Joanna hit on some important stuff. And this is why these conversations can't be this simplistic. Because like I said, Joanna sees the back end of it. Same with me when we look at finances. The numbers don't lie. When you look at this stuff, it's like, I get it. Everybody wants something. But when you start have to crunch the numbers as far as retirement, you have to literally put when I was mapping out the will, if you want to like retire and take out a certain amount to pay your bills and your medical bills, because that's what's wiping people out of retirement, you literally have to put away like $50,000 on top of your salary. And most people are not going to be able to do that. That's why I always tell people, man, go talk to a financial advisor. Because it's like, this stuff sounds good. Yeah, no, I'm just saying, but it's just like, that's where we got to go to that level, man. Like,
yeah, we do need to break it down.
I agree.
And it's got to be the sacrifices you're willing to give up to like invest in that future.
Exactly.
Do it, but if it ends bad, at least both people in a bad place. That's what I'm saying. So I get what you're saying. I think it does.
All I'm saying is I think there's conversations that can be had. If you are if you get with somebody if you meet a girl, she's driving a Mercedes and you say, hey, I can't put you in a Honda. Yeah. Or you meet a guy who never had a job and hasn't really kept a job. I wouldn't think, oh yeah, if he says, hey, stay at home, I'm gonna take care of kids. Yeah, I don't really see that it's not really bearing out. But if you see a man who's been on his purpose, you see him steadily progressing, making these positive steps or what have you, or you see a woman who's kind of like, more simple with her lifestyle or what have you. That's something that, I think it can work out if the right type of people. It's not for everybody. It's absolutely not for everybody. It's not for Mara.
Yeah. So Dame, I love what you said. It's not for everybody, but like, honestly, hearing Joanna speak like immediately when she was on her like third point, I was just like, yo, her intellect is on a whole different level. Like, why would I want to suppress that? Why would I want her to be at the house, like just, taking care of kids? Not to say she can't take care of kids, but it's just like, if she's capable to go out here in the world and kill it, why not, utilize that and like take a team approach to like building a legacy?
I get it. Make an argument for that. Dave,
what's that?
I can make an argument for that. I can make an argument for that. Because as much as you revere the intellect of Joanna, that's even more beautiful when it's seen displayed by your children. When you have time to pass those quality traits to your children, that is something that serves satisfaction in both men and women. That's an argument from our end. It's not that we're looking at it from a suppression point of view, but we choose women that we know who are going to standardize the same thing that we value. And I get the whole point of dual income and wanting to progress further. I think from Dame and I's point of view is that when we look at relationship, we don't just look at relationship as man and woman. We also look at children as a part of that factor. And when we look at children, we often optimize for the children rather than both of us. And if doing so, a byproduct of that is that we also have to optimize, and that is a discussion to be had. So that's where I'll make an argument. I want to talk about the risk conversation, because the risk conversation is not fair. It's not fair in the sense that, yes, I wholeheartedly agree. If you're a stay-at-home mum, you're more at risk when it comes to financial. However, we have to also consider there are vehicles to de-risk women legally in the system, whereas it's not favored towards men. And it's not a gender argument. Let me just make that clear. It's more of a majority argument. And the argument is that it is whoever is earning the highest income. And oftentimes that's men when it comes to relationship. So there is a vehicle of de-risking women staying at home. Now, how far that risk is when you're wanting to de-risk, that's a point to be argued, but it's an unfair argument to make that women are only risking certain things. You have a vehicle of de-risking, and it's enforced by law.
You want to respond to that, Joanna?
Well, it just depends on what that de-risking actually looks like and means. Because yes, there is a vehicle to de-risk, but then we also have to look at societal norms that pressure women. If you focus on the money, if you ask about the money, if you push on that before you get married or before you make these decisions for yourself, you're all about the money and you're greedy, you're selfish. And if you marry somebody who is much more wealthy than you, then you also have power dynamics, right? And you have to look at how women navigate those power dynamics within relationship. Are they confident enough to be in that relationship and not mute themselves, right? Or do they start to feel guilty? Do they start to feel like they're not supposed to be asking for more money? Or they feel like they're not, like, there's so many things that can put risk on women that it's just from societal conditioning alone, right?
Don't disagree. The fact that you're very knowledgeable in this area means that you are the vehicle of de-risking for women. When we look at men, we can make all these counter arguments, but most of the time the risk goes towards us because we're typically the highest earner. The fact that you're a wonderful woman with a high intellect, that you make sure that these things are worked out in matters of court for women means that you are the vehicle of risk. From your expertise, can you make the same argue that men receive the same on average? Do men on average, let's make the majority case, do men on average have the same vehicle that you do have and that you provide? And are they more successful than women when they do utilize your service?
I think that this is hard, right? Because very rarely.
I don't need an answer, by the way. If you don't have the answer, that's fine.
Very rarely do I see women hire me because men aren't ripping out their checkbooks to help support them after staying at home. And they don't have a bank account. They don't have money to access that money, and men are not making it easy for them to do so. So my question more revolves around how willing are men to take on that risk and to also be more willing and honorable in the exit process of going to their women proactively and saying, you are the mother of my children. How can I help you be successful in starting over? I rarely ever hear that story in that process. And so it's like, well, I don't know what the answers are entirely, but I do know statistically speaking, women are in poverty after divorce and take much longer to recover financially than men. And that's just something that we know from statistics that are out there today.
Hey, can I jump in real quick? Because to answer your question, Paulo. Oh, go ahead.
It's great you landed in the masculine mind because we make the same argument. So I'm one who's financially responsible for my wife and children. And I make the argument that should ever be the day that my wife divorced me, I don't need to go through court of law to divide my wealth in half. She's the mother of my children, and she's dedicated her youth to being the mother of my children. She's going to be in a situation where she needs to cater for them. So therefore, she is, I don't want to use the word deserve, but she is in that better half of my wealth is hers.
Yeah, and I want to just know, it's like, I think if women out there
wanted to get in there, Dame.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Just let me get just one point.
No, go ahead, Dame. I'll jump back.
I just think it's like women shouldn't be wholesale marrying guys where they can't have that conversation before it goes to shit.
Facts.
Why are you marrying a guy that you can't say you can't talk about? If you're really that scared about having a business conversation with a person that you're about to dedicate the rest of your life to, you are marrying the wrong person, or you are the wrong person to be getting married. So I'm thinking you need to be able to have that conversation up front. Be like, look, I love you. I plan on being with you the rest of my life, but things happen in life and we may separate. What is, you care about me now. What can we do to make sure that I am taken care of. I don't, if something happened, if you decide you're not in love with me or what have you, and nobody's done nothing egregious like physical violence or cheating, that, you know, that I'm going to be okay. And if you don't have a man or a trans person, let's say a woman, because this is women, sometimes it can be the other way around. If you don't have the person who says, here's what I'm willing to do to make sure that you okay, because now I'm dedicating, I'm right now, I'm thinking you want to be taken care of for the rest of your life. So here's what to make sure that can happen even without me. Then you're marrying the wrong person. Don't get married. That should be a red flag, like all over the place. Like, you know, if the person is like, why are you talking about that? We're going to stay together ever. That's unromantic. You're marrying the wrong person. That's what I'm saying. If you don't wait till go, and I think that's what people done. And, you know, I've almost done that. You wait till shit goes to shit. And then you start to, like, you know, that's like the people who wait till they're 600 pounds to start working out. I'm like, dude, it's kind of the horse is out the barn. I'm like, you can lose some, but you're never going to be healthy as you could have been if you'd have done this when you start getting a little bit of gut. You know, that's what happened. It's like be the person who's proactive and like, let's ask the fucking questions before you get married. Marriage is fun, it's romantic, it's lovely, you can have kids, but it's also a financial obligation, and you need to approach it as such. And that's my soapbox.
A good point, Dame. But just going back to what Paulo was asking, does men have that, like I say, advocate as like Joanna? I think we do, but I think our egos a lot of time block us from, like, you know, hearing out anything else, because I was guilty of it. And then just to share a story with you, me and my wife, we're 50-50, and we do it from a financial sense to gain. And we went to this one couple's house. They were older, very successful. Wife was a CFO. Husband was like a businessman. And so we were just like picking their brain, asking all these questions. Their kid was like in an executive path. So everything's clicking on all cylinders. And I remember I was talking to the guy. I'm like, hey, man, why y'all establish this like this? Why are you going to get society norms? You know, just how you guys are established. You got a successful kid that's like on the path to be an executive. And he was like, hey, man, if you want to get in that 1%, you got to think differently from 99%. And that's what I'm trying to tell people a lot of times. Like, I get it. A lot of this stuff is preferences. Because even like with me and my wife, we took every approach. It's based on our family and our kid. You know, so we just looked at it like we could still pump into our kid. We just got to make sure we have the flexibility. And our son, like I said, he's in college making like straight A's and stuff. And we made sure with our resources, we got them tutors and, you know, put them in different like classes and different trainings and stuff. So there's ways around this. And I think people just like, I think what Joanna was saying, we got to look at it a little differently, get creative. And the last point, I just think, like what Dane was saying, you definitely got to question everything. Because a lot of time, like I help people with their finances. You know, I don't charge people. I'm just like, hit me up, let me get you right. And one thing what I noticed about females, y'all don't like discussing finances. Y'all, I think sometimes y'all just want to push it off a little bit. And that's the trend I see. So definitely ask some questions. Be forceful. Like what Dame's saying. Like, and guys, I approach everything from a risk mitigation standpoint for me and my wife. I'm like, hey, I could live in this fairy tale, but we're people. We might not like each other. So I looked at it like, I'm going to make sure we both build up. I'm putting money away for both of us. You know, that way it's just like, hey, if things go sour, we're both going to be whole and stuff like that. Because you are the mother of my son. So I looked at it. I know Dame, Paulo, and Manic and Will, we all have that same mindset. So I like what Dame was saying. Like, definitely, these should be them conversations at the first date when people are like, oh, I don't want to do no interview. Nah, interview that motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Lay that shit out. Like, how do you feel about like a woman in your life? How we gonna do the finances and stuff? Have them tough conversations.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Jerk. I just want to pass it back to the other lady, so I'm gonna give you guys some time. Itaisan, anything you want to add on to the conversation? Any thoughts? Anything you want to add on?
No, they said it all. Honestly, I'm just processing everything that you guys are saying right now. Yeah.
Okay. I'll pass it to you, Ashley.
No, I'm good.
You good? Itaisa? Okay.
Yeah, I'm disagreeing with everything, and
go
also
ahead.
processing. Just yeah, So I'm just processing everything that was just being said. But so far, I have no disagreements.
Okay.
Definitely feeling jerk on that. Thinking if you want to get to that 1%, you got to think differently. And so, yeah, that's it.
Okay. And then Mara, anything want to add on?
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to our conversation that we had last week on the podcast about accountability and just making smart decisions during the courtship phase. Courtship dating is for data collection. So if you're dating with no direction and this man has no vision for you, and you can tell quite easily within like the first month or so, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it almost makes me wonder how people can be together for like almost a year plus and not have any real conversation. Like, what are you guys talking about? Like, that's honestly one of my first thoughts is what could you possibly be talking about if you're not talking about real things that are going to impact your future? And like what you guys were saying about diversity and what it looks like in every household. Absolutely. There's going to be providers also at every single like income, right? In every single class level, there's going to be a provider at like the low class, middle class, and upper class. So who you choose to have your provider and what tax bracket they fall under is going to also determine the type of ease I think you would have. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. Because yeah, every man is going to have a really different perspective of how withholding they want to be or how generous they want to be based off of where they rank, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been my experience thus far, especially working with millionaires. Like I don't know, whenever they talk to me about how they do their family things with their kids and their wives, it's usually set up in a way where, yeah, she's a stay-at-home mom, or probably she was a housewife before having kids, and they pretty much had a container, or almost like a retainer, I should say. So if she wanted to have or partake in getting rental properties with the husband, some of them would be in her name. She would have maybe a side business, hobbies, but it would not be taking away from the fact that her number one job is to be at home, if that makes sense. So it's not this, you're going to be traditional in the sense of you're just raising my kids. Like we have nannies, we have housekeepers, we have other things to make my life and our life easier. We have systems in place that are built. So the woman, at least in these tax brackets that I work for, are not undergoing these type of issues, I guess like petty issues, I would call it, because they have properties in their name and they have prenups and postnups within the first year. So I don't think I have fear personally going into a marriage with this mindset or concept, because I know what kind of structure personally I am looking for. So I know if I don't want to struggle, I'm probably not going to marry into a certain type of class level, if that makes sense, regardless of how that sounds. But that's just what I'm going to do.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mara. I have a hot question I want to ask everybody, and I would love this. This is a hot topic that I see that's trending online. First and foremost, I just want to say I do agree with Balafessa. That's my mentality when it goes to relationship. I do, because accountability is something I practice. You know, if I'm married to somebody and she decides to divorce and leave me, because she's the mother of my children, I definitely make sure she's well taken care of before I move on to the next family, because I just have a mindset that if she moves on, I'm going to move on. I'm still going to be successful. I'm still going to find somebody else. But I'll still make sure she's taken care of. But I do want to talk about something that I do hear online, and it's always creating a lot of controversy online. So we're talking about providers, right? We're talking about guys working every single day to try to provide for their women and their family. So I just want to ask you, ladies. So I do understand that we do live in society today. They know divorces are pretty high. That's something that's it's become a norm today. You know, most marriages don't often make it. Don't make it. A lot of people are getting divorced. But I want to hear from the female perspective. So outside of infidelity, so I do agree. Like if he cheats on you, if you emotional, physical abuse, you know, he starts to be a degenerate and, you know, become an alcoholic and drug addict. Yeah, outside of all the extreme reasons why, outside of those extreme reasons, I agree. You should get divorced. Even though I don't believe in divorce, but I do understand why people would do that. If a man's providing, protecting you, and you as a woman took a step back to raise the kids, and you decided to, because we had no fault divorce, right? So if you just decide, what, I don't want to be in this relationship no more, I just want to leave for whatever reason you may have outside of those extreme reasons. So do you still? So I just want to ask the women. So if a woman decides to allow the man to be the provider, protector, to sacrifice himself for a long period of time, and he's never done none of those things, right? And then you as a woman decide, what, I just don't feel it no more. I'm not happy no more. For whatever the reason, I'm just going to leave the relationship. Do you still believe that man should still provide and protect you and take care of you financially, even though you initiated the divorce? Because what's her? Because that's what I hear online. Why a lot of guys, and even though I'm against it, but I do understand why a lot of guys, why I feel some type of way of taking care of their women if they're the ones that initiated and decided to leave them. If they never did if they never cheated, if there was no physical abuse, alcoholism, drugs. But we do live in a society today that if you just don't want to be in a relationship no more, I don't want to do this anymore. So if a woman does that, I'm interested to hear that. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that it's still on the man to make sure that she's well taken care of, and even though you guys have kids, even though if you just decided to leave the relationship on your own, I'll start with you, Anissa. What do you think?
It's complicated because a part of me wants to say no, he should not have to take care of a person. It depends on what their vows were before they got married. Like if they said that that's what I'm going to do, then that's what you should do regardless, because people can break up if they're emotionally uncompatible. If there's a lack of intimacy, there doesn't have to be cheating or physical abuse or emotional abuse. That's just how I feel about that one.
Okay. I'll pass it to you, Ashley. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. As long as he takes care of the kids. I mean, obviously we would both take care of the kids, but you get what I'm saying, like support them, and I'm not going to ask you for anything. If I'm not happy, then that's not on him.
Okay. All right. Itaisa?
I actually have to agree with Ashley on that one. As long as the kids are taken care of, I don't think it's his responsibility. And also, oh dang it, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, that's I have to agree with Ashley.
Okay. Joanna, what do you think, Joanna?
Well, it's a nuanced conversation, and laws support certain lifestyles over others, right? So if you have somebody who's been a stay-at-home mom, laws might be a little bit different than they are someone who's been breadwinning alongside a partner. I think it's definitely, if you're putting the kids at the forefront and the mother has no money and she's moved out, and we're saying it's all about the kids, right? The kid being around a very stressed out mother who has no money is not necessarily good for the children either. So we have to remember that. However, I mean, I left with nothing and I never got a dime, right? Living in my sister's basement. So I've done it myself. I understand what it is to take on the responsibility of leaving a partner. But, I also had domestic violence and alcoholism in my marriage.
Yeah.
But so when you look at, is a man responsible for? No, he is not. I can take care of myself if that is something that I need to do. But if I am in a relationship where, again, we've agreed to have me stay at home, and it's like, it's not good for kids to be in a contentious home either. So, I mean, I just think it's a very nuanced conversation to be having. It's hard to say yes or no one way or the other, but I know the route that I took was, I'll take care of this myself, Yeah.
Okay. No worries. Thank you for sharing that, Joanna. What about you, Mara?
Yeah, there's really hard circumstances that I would imagine that would constitute for divorce outside of cheating or, you know, like these extreme cases. But I mean, if it happened, definitely want my kids to be taken care of, obviously. And I also would want a similar type of comfortable atmosphere where my kids could also grow up, where they're not feeling like we're going to daddy's nice house and then mommy's house is over here in a shack somewhere because, you know, she didn't get anything or any kind of alimony or no properties or nothing. So I think if I was with a man who really loved me, even before the whole breakup, I would think he would want to have some type of decent place for his kids to be raised as a bare minimum. Not that he's paying for my hair and my nails and all these things, but housing and the kids and like bare essentials, I think would make sense.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing that, ladies. I'll pass it to fellas. Any responses from you guys?
Yeah. It should be non-negotiable. I don't think it should be nuanced. It should be non-negotiable. If you are a man who is in a relationship or in a marriage with a woman who's become a stay-at-home mum, that she's raising your children, it should be non-negotiable that you should provide for her.
Okay.
Right. So I don't. And this is so it's touching on a earlier question. What do men provide? So we should provide security, stability, and safety. That's what we should provide. And the moment that you go against those three things, when it comes to your responsibility to the woman that you're with in marriage, you should be put under the condition that we're describing here. Yeah. And from your experience, Joanna, from speaking to that, absolutely, right? And it's, again, I'm not making a case for fairness in this one, but it is one of those things that, and I applaud the platform that we're on now, that we try and have conversation around, is that as men, we should nuance things that should make sense from a man's perspective. If you have a child with a woman in marriage, and the moment that it becomes a separation, you should do the absolute best in your capability to provide the level of safety and security that you couldn't. And if the law has to step in, then it should.
Okay. Damien, did you want to add on?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much in line with Palapesa. I'm in the same situation. Like, you know, if somewhere to happen and my wife lost her mind and decided she no longer wanted to be my wife, yeah, she would be straight taken care of. But the thing is, I think the questions come for, you know, am I taking care of her until my kids are gone? Because I got a 6-year-old. So does that mean for the next, you know, must be 18, 12 years, is she taken care of fully by me 100%? You know, if that's what we've agreed upon. And then what happens after the kids are gone? Does she, I was like, now do you have to go fend for yourself? You know, do you have to go create a life? Or in that time, because I was providing that security, should you have started to process of making your life, because you know that the support is going to end at some time? And I think that's what happens a lot of times. Like, a lot of people aren't using that time that they are being supported if something goes left to develop to really start to reevaluate and like develop the end game. What happens when his money is gone and I don't get the you know, the child support or the support or what have you? What am I going to do with myself? I think take that time, go back to school, do everything you got to do, what have you, get yourself together again, because when it's over, it's over. I didn't agree to, like, if we separate, I'm not agreeing to provide for you for the rest of your life. That's just not the thing. I provide for you and my children while they are children. When they're adults, you know, they go their way, and then you have to figure it out for yourself. I think that's is a fair and equitable thing. And the way I look at like finances and shit is like, you know, and I think this only works in a dynamic that I think me and Palafeso kind of agree with, when there's children involved. It's a whole different situation if we're just married, it's just me and you. You know, if I met you and you were a cocktail waitress and I said, hey, you know what, I was a CEO of a company, and I said, hey, stop being a cocktail waitress and just rock with me out, what have you, you know, then it's different. Like mine is, if I meet you and I got $5 million and there's no kids and we divorce and I still got $5 million, you don't deserve shit. You know, and that's what I'm saying. But if I meet you and I got $5 million and no kids and I got $20 million, you know, then you might deserve $10 million. because there's progression there, and I'm sure you had a hand in making things at least comfortable enough for me to probably progress and be easy enough for me to move over. But yeah, that's kind of where I feel about it.
Okay, thank you, Damien. What about you, Jerk?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what they're saying to a certain degree. Like, definitely always gonna provide for my kid. So whatever that cost is, and we add in, I'll factor in all the activities. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely give up that money. But as far as paying your mortgage and shit, no, I'm not on board for that. If you like take off because you want to go hang out and stuff, totally different element. I like what Dame kind of broke down. Like, if we built together and stuff, absolutely, man. Divide it down the line. You take your cut, whatever. But yeah, as far as like, yeah, paying somebody's bills and stuff, nah, I'm not in that lane. I'm sorry.
Hence why I use the descriptive stay-at-home mom. You have to have children to qualify.
Me,
So,
yeah.
Again, I think, you know, we need, on our side of the argument to the ladies, the argument to be made there is that there are men who find themselves in divorces, whereas, you know, a vast majority of cases now, from the sound of it, is that men are finding women leaving them more in droves. What I want to address in those conversations is that the data is skewed against you and is used by especially content creator to convince a lot of people that marriage is failing. The rate is going down, but it's not failing per se. When we look and consider the data, it's successful in the metric of it's over 50%. By at least 9%, I think it is. It's 59 or 60, whatever the data is. It's still overwhelmingly that only 40 to somewhat 41% of first-rate marriages end in divorces. So the data is skewed. And not only that, it's a subset of culture that divorce. And I'm not talking about ethnic, it's practices. So again, when we have these conversations, and I get the counter argument from both point of perspective, but I think what most people agree with is that you don't get with people for the long haul if you disagree on base values. And when people try and convert other people who don't agree with the same ideologies when it comes to being together for the long haul, and they find themselves sort of at the brunt end of it all, they sort of look and point the finger, I'm sorry, but you took on the risk understanding. And from our end, as men, you have to understand your risk. You cannot just convert anything or anyone to marriage. And if you're going out here and saying it's women's fault, no, it's that we're trying to convert women who don't want to get married for the long haul. Now we're finding ourselves in the level of disadvantages that we have is because we do that. Because we like the fat asses. Well, the fat ass is going to leave you high and dry.
We do like the fat asses.
All right. Shout out to everybody on the live chats. And Stanley Joseph, hey, good to see you on the live chat. I don't think I've seen you here before. So shout out to you, Stanley. Prudy, good to see you. William Graves, you're always as trolling as usual. Knowledge and relationships, hey, good to see you on the live chats. And I just saw somebody brand new. Did I skip over his name?
Kyle.
Kyle something. Is that one of you guys supporters? You guys recognize who that person is?
No.
Okay.
Shout out to Kyle.
Yeah, shout out to Kyle. Okay. No worries. But shout out to Kyle. But don't forget, we have a great show planned for you guys. And we do have some room on the panel. So if you do want to jump on as a guest, the link is in the description. Click on that link. I do want to jump on. Jerk, you want to say something?
Yeah, can I ask Joanna a question? Because I saw the private chat about the like salary ranges. Which bucket does most people fall in that you kind of see like as far as like salary range? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so most of the women that I teach in my classes, they fall underneath the 200K range household income combined. And then, I always have the ladies that are in private coaching that have much more money than that. But yeah, I would say it's under 200K. So in those cases, right, there's not a lot of alimony to give. And I think that's the piece that I don't think a lot of people think about ahead of time. And also some state laws don't even call for it. And alimony sometimes only kicks in after you've been married a certain amount of time, and you only get it for a certain amount of time. And then there's a range. So it's like, not all women that are married to men who are the breadwinners that are not earning high and they have children with them. Like that really does put them in a tight spot. And it puts both people in a tight spot, right? When you're not earning high amounts of money, now you have two households and you had someone completely dependent on you financially. It's not easy to make that happen for two people.
So for somebody making like say like 200,000, what would be a typical payout for like alimony?
A couple thousand maybe max.
Yeah. And only 3% of women get an alimony. Something like that.
It's not often that women get it. And they have to be married. Like most states, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't give legal advice, but I'm a liaison between lawyers and the client, right? And so depending on state laws, like sometimes you have to be married over a decade to even qualify for alimony. So if you've married for 8 years and you've been staying at home for 8 years, you know, like you have to look at that and say, okay, now how can I negotiate the whole divorce settlement to kind of give me a lump sum of money to start over so I can go try to rebuild something, right? It's tough. It's those cases, it's heartbreaking, really. Like it's not something that's fun for people. And I don't think that women get married because they don't want to be with someone forever. I really don't see women coming to me who got married thinking they weren't in it for the long haul, you know? And I think that that's something else. I don't think either party is like that. I don't. I just don't see that.
I think people get in there and they have like unrealized expectations because those expectations were never expressed. I think what it happens is I don't think people change that much. People are like, oh my God, they changed. I think they really are who they are. They just never expressed it to you because the situation wasn't comfortable enough for them to express it. Like, you know, a guy is like, oh my God, you know, I want you to be a certain way, or a woman's like, I need you to be a certain way, or I need to be able to do a certain thing. It's like they're just not expressing it, and it gets to the point where they can't hold that in anymore. And when they express it, there's a lot of resentment behind it, so it comes off negative, and it just blows up into where it's like, we got to kill this shit. We got to kill this relationship. It's dead. We need to move on, or what have you. I think if people just expressed everything they needed for a long-term relationship and everything. I'm talking about everything. I mean, who's going to take out the trash? How often are you going to have sex? You know, who's going, you know, where are you going to live? You know, how many kids you got? If you have all the conversations, then you can mitigate some of that animosity that might creep in, that might lead to that explosion where you feel like you got to kill the relationship.
Okay.
I agree. I don't think women are explicit enough. I really don't. Like, I think one of the things that I really work on with women that work with me is recognizing that relationships are negotiated and explicit agreements need to be made. Like explicit, not assuming that we're on the same page, not thinking we're on the same page, like nuanced, detailed, explicit conversations about what you're agreeing to, because I think that those things can be renegotiated over time. But again, it's easier to renegotiate something when you know what you've agreed to begin with. I don't think it's like the magic bullet that's going to make every marriage last forever. But I do think that women, we hide from the truth of what we want so often so that we don't rock the boat. And I think that we withhold information, we shy away from information, even if we have a safe partner. Admitting what you actually is so vulnerable, right? To have those conversations. So I do think that there's a level of responsibility to express yourself and unmute yourself and know yourself, and to also be able to push back when something doesn't feel right to you, you know, instead of just going along with it and then breaking a little bit of rapport and saying, hold on a second, that doesn't feel fair to me. How can we look at this again? You know, and going back to the drawing board to reach resolution, because that's all negotiating is, right? Is reaching agreements. That's all it means. It's multiple conversations to reach an agreement. And so the more comfortable you can be with those conversations and the uncomfortable ones and expressing exactly what it is that you want and what you expect and what you require, I think will go a long way for a lot of relationships.
I have a perfect example of what you just said. Like my cousin, he's single now. He just got a divorce a couple of years ago, and he's dating and what have you. And he met a woman who is very religious. I mean, she, you know, has prayer circles and stuff like that at her house, and has Bible study for her kids. And he's an atheist. And it's just one of those things where she thought, she was like, you know, she was like, he's just such, and he's a good ass guy. He's smart, intelligent, good looking, tall. He's all the things, you know, but he just is like, I just don't rock the way you rock. And she was like, well, trying to pull herself, maybe I could get with it. If, you know, she was like, as long as you don't like, make me feel bad about it. He was like, I'm not going to say shit about it, but I'm just not, just know that if I'm ever to go with you to like church, I'm thinking about something else or whatever. I wouldn't be it wouldn't be a part of how I move my life, but I would, you know. And then I was like, you need to dump her tomorrow. I was like, you need to break up with her tomorrow. I told him that. I was like, you need to break up tomorrow, because you cannot be with somebody whose life has been structured around one thing. Their whole existence is structured around one thing. You cannot fake the funk, because you are going to build up some type of resentment, and then you're going to act out. And I was like, so don't even put yourself in a situation. And just like what you said, Joanna, I think what happened is, like, people will sit there and be like, well, maybe I can find a way to work something out that I'm completely against. Maybe I can find some, well, you know, I don't believe in drinking, and he drinks, you know, maybe if he can cut his drinking down, you know, you need to just, if they don't rock with what you rock with, and for the things that are foundational, you need to just be like, I'm out. You know, I can't deal with you. I'm gonna find somebody whose values are more in line with myself, so I don't have to even fool myself. And so we don't have to be breaking up 2 years from now.
Facts.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So real quick, Joanna, do you think like people should be hiring somebody like you on the front end, like pre-marriage counseling, where you actually talk about finances too and stuff? That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Like, I think even sometimes having conversations with women privately and being like, okay, what do you know about the money situation? And they're like, nothing. I'm like, okay, cool. So here's some questions that you can take your partner in a healthy way, in a gentle way, and have these conversations, right? So that it gives them the courage. Because a lot of times when they do come to me for these things, it's because they feel this level of like, I don't know how to do this, but still be confident in it, right? So there's this, it's just part of it is being comfortable asserting yourself in the relationship and just knowing what you're agreeing to, or just saying like, what is it that you're expecting me to do as a wife, right? Like, even that question, they're like, can I ask that? I'm like, well, you probably should, because there's some expectation of you, you know, like you might want to know, so that you can either negotiate that or you can come into agreement with each other. And yeah, I wish more women would have these conversations. I really do. I think women catch me on the back end, and it's horrific, and it's heartbreaking, and actually traumatic. And, you know, it breaks trust for a really long time. You know, recovery from divorce can be a long time too. And it's not that men don't hurt. It's just that women have a really, really hard time asserting themselves when asking for what they want. And it's like the direct communication thing is real tough for a lot of ladies. It just is. And especially women who want to be in their soft feminine, all that, you know, they come to me with their gentleness. I'm like, I love your gentleness, but I know there's a little lioness in there, and we're just gonna peel back the layers and find her, and then you're gonna go ask the thing, right? And I think once they get a hang of it, right, they become more proficient, but also I think they become more emboldened to really live a life that they want to live. And I think that's beautiful. And I do think that men, if they're truly masculine, can handle a powerful woman and would want them to be in their full power, right? And I think that that's something that would be encouraged.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that, Joanna. Appreciate that. I want to focus on a little bit on the uncommunicated expectations. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are failing when it comes to long-term relationships. And I do agree with Mara on what you shared, right? What you shared. If you're thinking long-term, if you're thinking for a family, why are you wasting time on discussions that have no value for the long-term result that you want, right? Oftentimes, I do a host of podcasts on Saturdays with women, and I ask them the question, what type of conversations are you having when you're going on dates? And usually the typical answer is, my favorite color, my favorite place I want to travel to, which I do. Conversations are things that has no long-term value when it comes to building a family and relationship. And I think for me, the dating phase is, if you're intentional, it's the vetting phase. That's when you're trying to vet out the people that are not compatible with the people who are not aligned with your values or what you're trying to look for. But I think dating has kind of is backwards now, and people are not really expressing they're not communicating their expectations until they're married and kids, and then 10 years later, now do you want to have that conversation, right? So, and I think Damien made a great point on the previous podcast. You know, all of it, you want to compromise, but it's too late now, right? It's too late to a point where you guys want to leave the conversation. The hard conversation should start in the beginning phase, so that way, if you come across somebody, you can still move on and find somebody else. But I want to pass it to the ladies. You know, when Joanna just expressed a point where a lot of women, you know, it's hard for them to have these hard conversations and be able to express what they really want for what their expectations, what they want, their demands. I think it's good to demand it if that's a standard that you have. But yeah, I just want to pass it to you guys. What do you know when you're going on dates, or maybe on your previous experiences with guys? What's your experience when it comes to expressing your expectations of what you want him to do, the role, the plan, the future, his expectations that he wants from you? Is that something you're comfortable with as a woman to do? Or this is a whole new conversation that we just opened for you, and you're just learning something new that you're gonna try next time with your next person you're gonna date? But what do you have what is your experience with communicating your true expectations of what do you expect from your man, and also asking him also with the vice versa, what is their expectations of me? Are you having those conversations? I'll start with you, Anissa. What do you think?
Well, for me personally, in my relationship, I got married really young. I got married at 19, and I've been married for 4 years. So being that young, I didn't ask any questions when I first got into a relationship, because we were both young, and I kind of just like went with the flow of it. But now I'm very vocal in like the things that I like and the things that I don't like. But I agree with Joanna in the sense that it's a little bit too late now, because there's so many issues that we have that should have been addressed at the beginning that I kind of ignored. So now I kind of have to like compromise on things that I'm not comfortable with, or he has to compromise on things that he's not comfortable with in that sense. But yeah, now we're very vocal about, oh, I don't like when you do this, or this makes me feel this way. I would like for you to do these things. So yeah, I'm vocal now, but before I was not.
Right. Can I just jump in real quick? There's two things. If you're having those conversations, there's two things that you need to remember and need to be part of every single one of those conversations: empathy and perspective. You need to have both of you need to have empathy for the other person's perspective, and you need to express that person needs to answer with your perspective in mind. So they need to understand what you're saying and why you're saying it, and the effect that and what it does, what you're saying and why you're saying it. So just make sure you keep that in mind, and as a part of it. Any good therapist will tell you that. Like, you know, if he's like, you know, why don't you do this, blah, 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 that means he's not understanding, you know, your motivation and what's got you moving the way you move, or whatever. So empathy and perspective, be empathetic and try to understand the other person's perspective, because I think it can mitigate a lot of bad communication.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I want to ask this question, if you don't mind. If you don't feel comfortable answering, that's fine as well. But what is the hardest thing that you want to express to your man, but you find it very difficult because you're afraid he might get defensive? You're afraid his feelings might get hurt. Like, what is the hardest thing that you have a hard time to tell him, as far as expectations of what you want?
Tell us total strangers.
Honestly, nothing. Like, because we go at it with each other, like vocally, like not violently or anything, but we really talk about stuff. So there's nothing that I will not say to him about something that I do not like. So we're pretty clear on our communication. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. All right, thank you for sharing, Anissa. I'll pass it to you, Ashley. Ashley, you know, what's your thoughts and experience when it comes to like expressing your expectations up front and trying to make sure like what you expect of him and vice versa?
Honestly, that's probably an area that I'm pretty fucking poor in. I'll just be completely honest. Like, my most recent situation, my ex is actually in the chat. The honeymoon phase hit me like a ton of bricks, and I did not didn't ask questions, and he really, I mean, we had conversations, but we learned along the way that we didn't ask the hard questions in the beginning, and ultimately things didn't work out. There's no bad blood between us, but I'm just saying, like, no, I didn't ask those questions, and everybody was trying to tell me, like, oh, it's just the honeymoon phase, and I'm like, no. But yes, it most definitely was, and I found myself there quite a few times. So yes.
Okay, I know.
No, don't worry about who it is.
I think your ex is in the back room. Do you want me to let him in?
No, what? You're lying.
She's lying. He's gonna pull up.
I'm trying to make sure you ain't shit talking him.
Yeah. She's a toxic chick.
I sent him the link. I don't care. Like, it doesn't. I'm not going to say anything that I can't say to his face.
No, I wouldn't let him in. So, I'm just joking. Okay, and also same question. You know, it doesn't have to be personal, but just like in general, what do you think is like one of the hardest things women find it really, really hard to ask or a man as far as expectations and communicating that to him?
I would definitely say questions around money for sure. Like,
okay, money, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so the financial questions. Okay, all right. Jerk, you shared that, right? You said that's one of the things that people have a hard time in, Joanna, asking questions about money. And a lot of guys, you know, especially if they're incompetent, they get very defensive when it comes to asking about money. But I think that's a good sign because guys who have their life together have no problem asking about money.
Or if they faking the funk, like you said, if they if they're fronting like they have living the way they're not lifting, they definitely don't want to have conversations about finances.
Is that him, Ashley? Byron? I see him on the live chat. That may be him.
Yeah, that's him.
Okay.
But Will, it's spot on because like when I be asking questions, you know, it's just almost like they don't want to face it. Because I think a lot of people, they might understand that they're behind. So it's almost like I got to pull them. I'm like, come on, man, we got to do this. Because like if you keep neglecting this, man, you're going to be way behind. So it's just like almost they don't want to face it. It's almost like I'll just ride this out and hopefully it'll figure itself out. So I think that it's definitely like a roadblock type thing, mental or something.
I think oftentimes women make the mistake of dating his potential, not his reality. So you potential to make money, but you're not dating his reality of what you see right now. And I think oftentimes that's what I hear from the conversations. But Paulo, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think as men, we also have done a huge disservice to other men by saying that these are red flags when women present these questions. And I've always been in the position that, you know, if money has ever been a discussion in the early stages, you should look at that with your logical brain. Is so much we yell to the clouds of we're the logical sex. You should understand why money and finances is a very important component to any relationship. Yeah. It's not just the welfare of you and this other woman, it's also the welfare of potential children. We look at society and its economic status, it's not doing well out there. So people are having those questions. And one of the things that we have to also consider is that I agree to an earlier point. We are in a situation now in modern time where we are both experiencing financial gains on both sides of the fence. Women are in the workforce. You cannot deny that. So finances will be in the forefront of a lot of these conversations. So when we look at it, and Jerk made a really good point, you have to crunch the numbers. If you're going to take on long-term relationship, you have to crunch the numbers, not only in the ways that you're going to look after someone, but also in the risk that you're putting yourself in. And you have to de-risk not by running away from something that is, and I hate when people make this argument that men get no benefit from relationship and marriage. We actually do. The mortality rate, our financial stability, and not only that, our earning incomes go through the roof when we are in long-term healthy relationships, right? So those three things are what most men are struggling with now. So anyways, so the finance part is always going to be an important component. What we as men, and this is why I think I have a pushback for you, Joanna, it's not so much the women's responsibility when it comes to having that conversation, because you often fall prey to the idea of the honeymoon phase. And that's something that now men, due to whatever reasons, we've been Disneyfied to the point where we're now getting encapsulated in that feeling also. If you're a man looking for a long-term relationship, you should set your expectations out. And it will be up to that woman to say yay or nay. Okay, I'm looking for someone who's going to raise my children, stay home for these years, and then later on, maybe we can go back to the workforce and build this thing together. Are you up for it or are you not? But we don't. And just as much as you have a plight for women not managing their expectation, we as men are terrible at managing our own expectation. We just want to smash and move on. And again, if we know all our risk, especially when it comes to legal matters, why the hell are we so reckless in the way that we are out in the world? Yeah. So absolutely, I support the financial component of any conversation, especially in the early days. It should be in the early days.
Absolutely.
Don't let it even run at least 2 months before you have that conversation. Sit down in a nice setting and say, look, I find you very attractive. I see something potentially going long term. What's finance look like?
I have something to add. I think, yeah, so I think with my experience with setting the expectation, I feel like you should be prepared on your dates to risk it all every time when you are expressing yourself or when you're getting to know someone, especially if they're like, what are you looking for? I feel like women should feel confident if they're looking for marriage to say, I'm dating for marriage. I'm not dating to be a girlfriend, I'm dating for marriage. So automatically that's going to put the guy into a role of, okay, cool, so now we're just going to ask real questions now. That's what I've noticed in my experience, okay? So usually what I've noticed is the men who are asking me about finances, if they're doing that on like the second, third date, about what would your ideal life look like, I tell them my dream is to be a housewife. And that's not with kids. Maybe kids can come down later, but like that's not what I want right now. And usually I get met with, okay, well, you know, I like that. And I actually want someone who can just pursue what they want to do. It's not really that important to me if you are just pursuing your hobbies or you want to do a side business or something. And if we have kids, I don't want my wife to be so caught up in child rearing that we can't go on vacation, that we can't still prioritize our relationship. So I've also heard some men kind of tell me very similar things along those lines, where they're saying, even if we were to have kids, I don't want you stuck to their hip like that. I want us to still be able to have some type of freedom and have an exciting, adventurous relationship. But those are also men who are very high earners. So I do think the way that they talk about family life or what they expect out of a wife when they get married is going to be vastly different. So, but I'm very upfront with what I want and what I expect, because I know I'm not for everybody. Everybody's not for me, right? Everyone could be like, some people, oh no, housewife is stupid. Other men are like, I totally want that for myself. So I think it's about, if you're clear with what you want, you're going to find out where you're being celebrated and not tolerated, right? It's just that simple. So I've had better experiences being upfront than pretending that I can be flexible with things I know are deal breakers for me. And I think men have way more respect for the fact that I'm just being direct. And I haven't had an issue so far with men who are like, that's, I don't know, that's too much or that's too little or whatever. I don't think I have not had any issues like that. So just be honest and don't be afraid. Like, don't let fear cloud your judgment, or don't feel like there are taboo subjects, because if men can talk, here's my thing, if men can talk about sex openly, you should be able to talk about money openly. If they feel like they can, you know, talk about, I want this, that, and the third, you should feel comfortable to talk about money in any capacity. So that's also kind of like a reminder. If I feel like men are kind of heading in that way, I automatically will change the direction. So that's what I tell my followers. Anyway, I hope that kind of brought some perspective.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Go ahead.
There's a psychology behind what you're just saying, and especially in dating. I read a study that 70% of people who buy lottery tickets don't check them after the numbers have been drawn, because they don't want to give up the dream of being rich. So there's a lot that psychology and dating is they don't want to give up the dream that this might be their dream person by getting into the reality of what is. So I think a lot of people do that. They put off those questions because everything is going good. And they're fantasizing like, oh my God, this might be him. This might be her. So they're living in this fantasy. They're deluding themselves because they don't want the real questions bring out the reality of the situation. So I think that's why a lot of people do that. And it can go on and go on and go on and go on. And then next thing they know, they're in a relationship with somebody and they've never asked the real questions.
That's true. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that, Damien. And Mara, real quick before I pass it to Itaisa, because you're very upfront. What's the one question or that you often ask guys and they get the most defensive or unwilling to communicate or have that conversation?
I ask them like, how do they feel about having a housewife? Like, how do they feel about that? That's on the first date.
And that's the question that often gets them like defensive and they don't want to talk about it.
I wouldn't say defensive. I think it throws them off because so many women, especially depending on where I'm dating, right? If I'm dating in New York City where it's hyper independent, like hyper independent, they're not ever really thinking about these things. It's like, oh, okay. So I've kind of had mixed reviews, but like I said, I will risk it all and I will say that. And it's not going to be so direct where I'm, I'll make it like very playful, like, oh, this is my dream. Like I always wanted to be a housewife. I always wanted to be there for like, XYZ reasons. This was what I wanted and da-da-da. And I'll kind of just engage their reaction. And if it's like, I never heard of that before, or that's not my experience, I'm like, okay. And there's no hard feelings. But I will throw that out there.
Okay. All right. That risk it all caught me off guard. All right. Thank you for sharing that, Mara. I'll pass it to Itaisa. Itaisa, same question before I pass it to Joanna. When it comes to expressing and communicating your expectations of what you want out of him and asking him what he's looking for you, what's your experience with that? And go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Very limited experience over here, but just based off of like my experience is that it's very much less about the other person. And I think what I realized is that I didn't even know what I wanted. And getting very clear on what exactly it is that I'm looking for before I even get into a relationship or into a commitment is getting very clear on what it is that I want, what it is that I'm looking for, and becoming that person first before, trying to attract anything like it. And so I think that's just based off of, my experience and jotting those questions down so that when I do meet that person, I'm able to communicate confidently. But obviously I have to be that person first. I can't just, but I think it just comes down to clarity of what I want before even jumping into a relationship.
All right. And also the second question was if you do date next time, like what is the one question that you really want to ask, but I think maybe it's going to take some courage from you to really ask that question, the honest question you want to ask him. Like what question would that be?
Definitely finances. I think that was a question that I struggled to ask, previously. Just because I didn't know if it was going to bring up any kind of insecurity or whatnot. Just being polite. I don't know if that's a Polynesian thing or whatever, just being polite and just don't ask these kind of questions. But yeah.
Okay, no worries. And then Harambe, I just dropped the super chat. Harambe drizzled white dust on Jack's soft guy era. Okay. Don't mind me. I'm just here to cyberstalk Itaisa. Okay. All right. No worries, Harambe. Thank you so much.
Why is Jack's name keep getting longer, man?
I know it changes every week. Every week is a new name. All right, and I'll pass it to you, Joanna. I know you have a lot of experience and knowledge now, but as far as communicating, what's your thoughts on that?
Okay, I'm sorry. I know you've asked this question like 5 times. Tell me the 2 questions again.
Yeah. So the first question is, what is your, as far as expressing and communicating to your man, what would those questions be? And then also, what is, what is the hardest one for you? I know you have a lot of experience. I know you've been doing this for a long time, but is there like one area that you still find it hard to ask or have with the man, especially if you're romantically interested in him?
Yeah, the questions that I typically have the hardest time with, like I could talk about money. I could sit there and I could shoot it straight with you so fast, but the ones that are the toughest for me are the vulnerable ones, the ones that I have to ask, for help or support, or ask what loving someone might look like for them. Like those are hard for me because I don't like showing my cards. I'm very guarded a lot. Like when I heard Mara talk about risking it all, I was like, I will observe you for at least a month before I will just like come out and say stuff, because I just want to see for myself if you're even somebody that I want to have that conversation with. And so like for me, it's like the role reversal of like, I am going to offer my time and have a good connection with somebody, but I don't just give people information unless they're actually somebody that I am interested in having that conversation with, which takes me a little bit of time to know, which, up to each their own, I guess. But yeah, I would say the questions that are the hardest for me are like questions that revolve around my own self or my own heart. I think those still remain the toughest.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for sharing that, Joanna. I just want to pass it to fellas. Anything you guys want to add on or respond to?
No, I think they had some good responses, but I do think, especially when we start getting older, I think Mara got the right approach. It's like, man, just lay it out, because it's just like, it's going to save both parties time and stuff. And I think sometimes we live in that fantasy too much, because like, I hear what Joanna's saying. It's just like, the month and observing, but it's too easy for us to start catching feelings and stuff. And then, before you know it, it's like 7 to 8 months and you still ain't had all those like conversations and stuff. So I just say like, them first initial dates, kind of start poking around and having them questions.
And I want to respond to something Ashley said. I want to say, so if I remember correctly, you're the mother of 3, right? Yeah, you need to get comfortable asking them questions, because your situation is a lot more significant than anybody else's. So you need to make sure you asking those questions. Because it reminded me of my mom. My mom, when she met my stepdad, he had 3 sons, and she met a man, and she said, "I'm not looking for no boyfriend. I'm not looking." She laid it all down, And my dad was like, "I'm that. I'm that. I'm that. I could be that. I could do that. All right, I'm that." And they've been together. They were together. It's going on 50 years now. Wow, no, not 50 years, like 47 years or whatever. But yeah, it's just like you need to be really comfortable with asking the damn questions, because you don't want them to come up in the heat of battle, because then it's going to be too much defensiveness and animosity to really understand what the person is saying and the person understand what you're saying. So you got to be real. Ask the questions you need to get the answers to up front. Maybe you need to take the Mara approach and risk it all or what have you, because the
she
dude
need to be Mara on steroids.
Rocking with you is going to be like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and he's going to appreciate that you putting out your candor, because you're not wasting his time, and he's not doesn't have to waste his time. You're wasting, he doesn't waste your time if he's not that guy. So whatever you got to do, practice with whoever. I just asking the questions and kind of figure out what those questions are, because maybe you haven't figured out what all the questions are. Figure out what those questions are. Make sure you have answers to those questions, and be not afraid to ask those questions like early on for the dudes that you rock with.
Believe me, after this last situation, I am.
All right.
Well, even to Ashley, like I'm a single mom, like even the questions around like, do you want to cohabitate or not? Do you want to do living apart together relationships? Do you want to blend your families? Do you want to be unblended? Like there's so many nuances to post-divorce relationships, especially with kiddos. You could really play with relationship too, healthy relationship for you and for your kids, and what that looks like. It's very different for every person. I would encourage you to really sink into that and think about what that might look like for you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will.
Yeah, actually, the honeymoon phase days are over. You gotta be direct.
Hey, it had been almost 4 years since I have been in a relationship, so give me some grace, okay?
I got you. But I just want to reverse that question back to the fellas. We were talking about the ladies and the things that they find it hard to express. I just want to ask the fellas on the panel the same thing. You know, when it comes to guys expressing their expectations to women, what comes to mind when you know what are the things that the men find it hard to express to the women, the things that they expect for her to do for him? Anything comes to mind? You know, your
sexual expectation. We're terrible at expressing these things, and it's one of the things that often drive a lot of undisciplined men towards infidelity. Talk about sex as men. Look, I'm someone who is quite, I don't know, active, and I would prefer to have someone that I'm active with. If that's not for you, then it's not going to happen. So yeah, you know, it's one of those things that we struggle with. And the other side of that too is that expectation in general is we struggle with that because we get googly-eyed vast majority of the times when we meet a woman, oftentimes outside of our caliber, and then there's mutual sort of interest in that way. But sex is the biggest one.
Yeah, that's always going to be the biggest one. And another one that's going to be aligned with that is like, you know, it's more for the newer generation. Like, you know, a lot of dudes really act like it doesn't bother them when the women do certain things on social media, when it actually does. And then it ends up causing arguments and fights later on or what have you. So those are conversations. Now, if you don't want her liking a bunch of personal trainers or whatever, you don't be doing that. Like my wife and I, we came to agreement. I will never like a single woman's picture of her in a bikini and dress, you know, whatever. If I don't know her, if she's not family, like my niece, she works out and I'll be like, oh, great gains or whatever, you know. But because I have that expectation of her. You're not going to be posting liking a bunch of, you know, trainers and all these people and all this kind of stuff. That's just not something that's going to be a part of our situation. And I'm not going to be a hypocrite, so I'm going to do the same. You know, like I follow people. If you have a picture by yourself, you with your kids, I like the shit out of it. You know, but if you sitting there in a bathing suit on the beach, I'm gonna scroll right by. And I think that's the thing is like your expectations on how to manage your social media presence. I think the guys are starting to struggle with. But like I said, like Paulo Professor said, sex is going to be the number one. But that's something that seems to be creeping in quite a bit nowadays.
That surprises me. Like I did not know that was something that men struggled with. Like I just didn't think about it at all.
Yeah.
About sex?
No. Yeah, social media pressure. Although I will say not many, I have not had many men talk to me directly about sex. Usually I'm the one that brings it up.
Because they don't want to scare you off.
Yeah.
But Will, I'll say one last one that I'm hearing now, you know, just kind of hearing guys mention is like, I would say debt. Because, you know, with the whole like people going to school and stuff, I think guys are, you know, they're interested in it because they're like, damn, how much debt might she be carrying? But they still don't want to ask that question. I'm like, man, you better ask that question because that's going to fall in your lane if y'all like merge together. So you better ask all them questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the debt and the sex one and the social media. So, Joanna, you were talking about the social media one when the way women post. You didn't know about that?
No, I didn't. Well, like I just really didn't. You're just living your life, you know, and I had never had anybody bring that to me but I don't really post a lot of stuff like that. It's usually my business stuff, but I've just never really had anybody be like, don't post that or I don't like it when you do that or anything around that.
I think what happens is it happens usually. Women, for the most part, I feel like are respectful for it, but it's just like all 50 of those bikini pictures when you were single before me that's still up. What happens to those?
Got it.
You know, are those still out there? You know, because that's the thing.
Yeah.
I do have a question for Joanna. So, what is the average age range of your clients, male and female?
So I usually only work with women. I don't get a lot of men that work with me. I've had one male client in the last year. He was a sweetheart. I really loved working with him. But for women, it's anywhere between the ages of 35 and 70. So it's women. Yeah. I would say by the time women hit 35 and they have a couple kids, that's usually when I start seeing them come visit me about divorce.
Okay.
That makes sense because most people are getting married at average of 29, 30, and then the average marriage is about 6-7 years.
Yeah.
So 35, yeah, that makes sense. The numbers make sense.
Yeah, I was just asking because she did bring up social media, and I was like, maybe that's not so common because the age range that she deals with is a little bit older, and they usually don't have so much of an online presence like younger millennials or younger Gen Z do. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've dated a lot of younger people in my I've been divorced for 10 years, right? So I've never had a dude
ask about that.
Yeah, I just never have.
You a cougar out here?
It's definitely a thing.
I didn't say it.
That's okay. All right. Well, we've the last part of the show. I know we were focused on the sacrifices and on the topic, but I just want to open up to the panel, ladies. Any questions you want to ask the fellas? It's an opportunity you guys can ask from the guys, and we can just give you real, raw, unfiltered feedback. So I do appreciate your time. But any questions in mind that you definitely want to just throw it out there and just get the real response from the guys? Any question you guys may have, just to end the show.
Nothing. We usually have a bunch of questions.
I have a question,
Go ahead.
and this is just like out of genuine curiosity. Like, what's the average age do men usually start thinking about like finances?
28-ish. Seriously, there's convinced and committed. That usually happen around. I feel for like around a 28 age frame. They start to be committed to like really like focusing on what they need to do to be financially secure if they of that mind frame.
I think it's changing now. I think younger dudes are sort of looking at finances, not in its entirety when it comes to relationship, but they're more aware of it now. I think the Red Pill movement has put a lot of light into finances. I don't particularly agree with the way that it's sort of developed, but I think you're going to find in the ranges of early 20s now, guys thinking about finances. Now, key word here is just thinking. But in terms of developing, a robust sort of plan, at least for finance, I think Dame's sort of on the ballpark. And it's not until you sort of get to your late 20s, 30s that you start sort of putting those sort of wheels into motions. But we are thinking about it very young now.
Go ahead, Dave.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
No, I was going to say, I think it starts early, like I'll say like 18, 19. And then like what Dame's saying, I'll say around like 26, 28. That's when because 18 to that age, they want money pretty much for women that go out on dates and stuff. So they're thinking about resources for the wrong shit. But then when you start getting to like 27, that's where you're like thinking about your 401k plan and probably saving to put a down deposit on a house and stuff like that. So
yeah, like you said, they learn about money. They know about money. They don't know about finances until they're 28. That's what I think. They know that they want money. They know they need money. And some people even have the ability to make good money. But the financial literacy, I think, happens when later on in life, 28, when you start to thinking, okay, I may not be ready, but at some point I'm gonna need to start settling down. I'm gonna need to start buying shit. That's gonna be last time start thinking for my future and stuff like that.
I just want to add before you move on. Don't let that be a barrier for you to ask those questions anyway. If you're finding someone, in their early 20s, just ask that question. Like, what do you think about money? What does money look like to you in a relationship? Is that something you consider? What about college? Are you looking at committing to debt, or do you want to go and work? Like these conversations, unfortunately, women are now more minded when it comes to it, and should be fairly though, because it's again the whole risk factor. Ask those questions again. I think needs to be reiterated. It doesn't matter what age you are. Ask those questions, because a man who can sit down and comfortably speak about finance when it comes to a relationship is someone who's tend to have a plan and understand the risk he's taking on when he's going into a relationship. And that's sort of where we sort of divest as a platform from a vast majority of online content, is that the idea of getting your money up is not just this whole idea of living in luxury. It's so that when you come into the role of responsibility and duty, you understand where your money is going, and not only that, you understand what is required of that responsibility. You know, we can't be just all millionaires riding Bugatti and having babies all over the damn place. Not the average man can afford that. But even the average wage, if we look at it, there are people who manage their finances well in relationship and are able to sort of progress through, you know, financial tiers while being in relationship. And I think, unfortunately for us as men, we've done a huge disservice by sort of taking that conversation at a basic level, especially when it comes to financial literacy, and just blowing it over proportionately when it comes to relationship.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Paulo Fessa. And I just have one question for Joanna before we conclude, because I know you coach your clients to communicate their expectations, right? Have you ever asked them what's their ability to communicate? Have you ever asked them, like, do they communicate well? Because oftentimes, like, you know, it's sometimes it's not what's said, but how you say it. I think sometimes when we talk about communication, you know, I've had people on this panel on previous podcasts, you know, they say, I try to tell my man to do something, but he never does it. And I always ask him, like, how do you tell your man? It's through yelling and like screaming. That's not probably the best way to communicate to get what you've done. So when you have conversation, when you communicate, is it generally when you guys sit down and have a real conversation, or is it generally a response when you guys having an argument and you've gotten your emotions are high? So when you have these conversations with women to communicate, do you often have conversations about their ability to communicate with the man in a way that they can receive it?
Yeah, I talk about.
We understand things differently for both men and women. We communicate differently.
Yeah, I talk about using gentle language a lot because well, first of all, when you study the dynamics of negotiation and healthy communication and effective agreement creation, it involves gentle language, and you have to know how to present something to somebody in a way that they can hear it. And also that's safe, right? So it's not okay for a woman to step out of emotional safety to demand something from a partner, right? Like that, there's accountability for that. And I would hope that they have a partner that can hold them accountable to the way that they are talking to their partner. Because I think when we step outside of emotional safety and we make it difficult for the other person to either A, feel seen and heard, B, feel like they're respected in the relationship, right? Like that's creating an unhealthy dynamic in the relationship. So I think sometimes helping women understand how to assert themselves in a way that's direct, but also very kind, right? Like you can communicate ruthlessly, but also be very kind and very sweet. And I know that because I do it for a living, you know, and it's just part of learning how to assert yourself. But also when you come from a place of power, you don't need to be aggressive. Like true power is choosing how you say something. You know, it's like your tone and the way that you deliver something. If you're really in control and you have power, you're going to deliver that message in a way that can be heard. And it doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes, but it also means that we need to be accountable, take responsibility, and make repair when we need to.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you for sharing that, Joanna. Yeah, I think that's a question I want to have, because sometimes, you know, I've gone on dates before in the past, and then I'm like Mara, I'm upfront. I'm not gonna pay for a date. We're gonna talk about your favorite color. Hell no. Like, I'm gonna have some open, real conversations, and oftentimes,
Damn, really?
no, I'm not gonna take up.
I'm just playing.
Right, but oftentimes, usually when I'm front with that, even if they disagree, but sometimes I could just see their reaction for the type of questions I might ask, and then, you know, if they get an attitude or why you ask that question, I can see this is how you communicate, especially when you get upset. And I think as a man, it's important to see how your woman communicates when she's upset. You know, if she can still be upset, but you guys can still have a conversation, But sometimes, yeah, that's something I always look for is like when I ask questions that can typically be very hard and direct, I kind of see their reaction to how they communicate back to me. If they disagree, or if they don't like what I ask, it was generally like they can handle that conversation, and we can navigate through a hard conversation with mutual respect towards each other. I think that's a good sign. But sometimes when I have conversations with women, I can tell either nobody's ever had that conversation with you, or you've never been around men that moves in attention. So usually the type of men you're used to just having those superficial color conversations, and this is something that's foreign to you. So maybe this is something that you've never done, and that's up to me to decide whether I want to continue this or not. So yeah, I was just interested from your professional standpoint. But shout out to everybody on the live chat that we have come to the end, to conclusion of the show. Thank you so much. Shout out to everybody. Okay, thank you so much for the great show. A lot of you guys watched the entire show. I saw a lot of new names on here on the live chat. Thank you so much. Shout out to the ladies. Thank you so much for jumping on and having real honest, deep conversations about a lot of the things that men and women are facing to figure out some real solutions for everybody out there. Thank you, fellas, for always making the time to be part of the Masculine Mind. But I just want to pass it back to you guys. What's your final thoughts from tonight's conversation? And what's your takeaways and how can they find you? All right, so let me start with you, Anissa. Anissa, thank you for coming on. It's been a while since our last podcast together, but thank you for making the time virtually. What's your final thoughts and takeaways, and how can they find you, Anissa?
My final thoughts is like I actually had a question about what you said and what the men had said about how they find that the question that they feel hard to communicate with women is about sex. But then you just mentioned that when you go on a date, or from your perspective, that the question that you ask women, they have a hard time answering. So what question are you asking them that they're having a hard time with?
Oh, I be asking real direct questions.
Really?
The top things I always ask is like, what's your thoughts on divorce? I just like this is like, what's your thoughts on it? On divorce. Another thing I would ask, and I was like, what's your thoughts on promiscuity?
Okay.
Like, what do you think about it? And a lot of times, some of the girls like they get upset. They get upset. Promiscuity, women are free and we can do whatever we want. We're autonomy. And that's a man. That's the mansplaining or whatever. In San Francisco, there's a lot of liberal women out here. I just said, what's your stance on it? Like, what's your stance on things? So I typically ask questions of things that's based on my values, because if you're against my value, then it's a waste of time. Like,
right.
It's really a waste of time. So the things that I find important. And I'm not trying to persuade her or change her mind. I just want to hear her stance. I just want to know what's your personal belief or your opinion about this topic. So I just so that's the one I just ask. And then some ladies, especially the more liberal ones, but they look traditional when I first met them. But then when you have conversations with them, they're liberal. They come out, they're actually liberal, but they look traditional.
Will, remember, one of the questions that we found out when I remember you had your Saturday panel and I came on as a virtual guest, and I said, what was your role in the breakup of your last relationship? You remember how it was like,
I remember that episode.
Zero accountability. I feel like that's a question, because I've asked that on my platform too. It's just like, it's so hard for women to pinpoint their role in the breakup. It was like, well, I was just too giving, and I was just, I just loved too hard, and he just was able to, or I just
gave too much.
I gave too much. I was just so attentive to his needs that I just didn't recognize myself. I said, no, what did you do that contributed to the end of your last relationship? And then if we could get one woman to admit what they did, then it opens the floodgates, because then it's the safe space. You'd be like, yeah, I had a smart mouth and I would talk about his mama when he got mad,
I'm difficult to be with. Everything pour out at them.
I remember that's where I got the girl got the name Clorox, because she told me she poured Clorox on his clothes.
On his clothes,
I was like, I was like, that's the hardest, I think. If you're going to ask, that's the hardest question, I think, to get the answer from was, what was your role in the breakup of your last relationship?
I feel we need to bring everybody back and answer that question. That needs to be a topic. So y'all welcome back. But Will, I got a question for you based on those hard questions. Do you wear like a dark shirt when they throw the drink at you?
No, they never threw a drink, but I think one girl, I think she reacted her reaction to the question, I think she hit her drink. And then
okay. Yeah, just wear dark clothes moving forward.
But here's the crazy thing. I think the one that responded, she was the most upset. It was just she was Mormon, right? And then when I asked her about the promiscuity question, she was pro promiscuity, and all I asked her was, "But isn't that against Mormonism?" Like, and that just triggered her. That just triggered her. So I was like, I'm just asking a legitimate question.
I do feel like that was a fair question.
Yeah, no, that was definitely fair.
That was fair. Yeah.
I was on podcast mode at that time. I was just like, I mean, isn't that against what you believe in? And then she got upset. Because you see, you're saying I'm a hypocrite. I was like, yeah. So that did it. That did it. But yeah, thank you so much. If I could come to the end, appreciate you guys. Appreciate the conversation we're having. And I think men and women should be having these types of conversations. And we got a lot of experience and people on the panel. But what's your final thoughts and takeaways? Anissa, I know you asked your question, but what's your final thoughts and takeaways? And how can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, ADYNSSTY. And my final thoughts are, I really had a great time on this virtual podcast. I learned a lot from Joanna and Will, honestly, your insight onto divorce. It gave me perspective of how people really do need to ask these questions before they get into these relationships, and not wait a long time to do that. But yeah, I had a great time.
Thank you so much, Anissa. Good to see you again. Always a pleasure to have you on. I'll pass it to you, Ashley. Always good to see you. And I always love the setup that you have behind you. I like the setup that you have. But go ahead, Ashley.
Thank you. My takeaway is definitely, what Damien told me, I need to start asking hard questions. And yeah, what else was I about to say? I was going to ask a question really quick.
Go ahead.
In relation to this social media, and that's because I have a fairly big presence on TikTok now, and to be honest, most of it is thirsty ass men. So going into, I guess, if I do want to get in another relationship, what are things that you guys would say shouldn't be posted or said? I go live, so I don't know.
I feel like this. I feel like, number one, what I say may not be the same as what the dude you're interested in. So it's got to be what his values is. It's going to be based on what he provides. Because I can tell you what I wouldn't want. For example, and I've seen your TikTok, and I've showed my wife that she wants to know what happened at the end of that 4-part thing about the Dominican Republic birthday. She wants to know what happened at the end of that. She's like, if you ever want to play with her
Dominican
again,
Republic, huh?
ask her about the DR birthday. What happened at the end of that?
I have so many traumatic vacation stories. We could be here all day.
Right, but yeah, it's just anything where basically, if you're, I feel like this is just me personally. If anything where you are just really denigrating toward men or denigrating toward him specifically, or if anything that I feel like is just but that's on him. If he's uncomfortable with bikini shit, whatever, it's all gonna be depending on what he's uncomfortable with and what you're comfortable with or what have you. Guys got to negotiate that. We can't tell you what not to post because he may be like, you can post all that shit, I don't give a fuck.
But the kind of play it safe. I'll say anytime you're damn near half dressed and you're faking a workout just so people can get a glimpse of you is probably not the best posting. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't post stuff like that. I really don't.
You don't come off as the type. I would say relationships should be off air. whether it's good or bad. I think most people get into this sort of drive, especially when it's good. They post everything about their relationship online. And for me, it's keep those things outside of social media, because again, the whole idea of communication is that you do it with the person that you're meant to be intimate with. And that's definitely part of comms. If things are great, express that to whoever you're with. Those little things all add up in terms of what fills their bucket. And the same thing, if things aren't going great, run to whoever it is that you're with and say, look, these aren't great. And I feel like I'm in a position where I'm having to compromise on things I don't really want to compromise with. Can we have a chat about this? And that's my big thing. Relationships should stay out of social media.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that, Paulo. But Ashley, what's your how can people find you, Ashley?
That's my ashleynicole.stl is my TikTok. Instagram is the same thing without the period.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mara. Thank you for jumping on again. Always good to have you. Definitely love your perspective. Final thoughts. How can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on the Click, or find me on TikTok under the .click411. And I guess final thoughts is I think I really do appreciate men who are very intentional on dates. So hearing you say that you have questions to ask, I think is really great and awesome. And I wish more men were a little bit more upfront like that, instead of just kind of perpetuating nonsensical conversations, about things that don't matter. So it's actually really refreshing to have men who are like, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? I will say, just as long as the tone is right and the vibe is okay, I think just kind of reading the room so that you're not like offending a woman. But overall, I do think it's a really good thing. And I think my last thought is for women just to always be prepared with the script to answer all questions so that you're never unprepared when a guy's asking about your past, a breakup or whatever, so that you're not fumbling over your words or you don't seem like you're composed. That's my best takeaway. But anyway, thank you so much for having me. My phone is dying, unfortunately, but I wanted to say thank you to everybody before I log off.
All right. Thank you so much, Mara.
All right, Mara.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, just to be honest, this is the way I communicate to the women. Hey, bitch, what are your thoughts? And I'm just
like, goddamn, Will.
Just joking, y'all. Just joking, y'all. That is not the way we communicate. But she made a great point. If you're going to ask questions, you have to communicate in a very effective way that people that can receive it and be receptive. Yeah, that's true. All right, I'll pass it to you, Joanna. Thank you. Final thoughts. Appreciate your perspective. Thank you for dropping a lot of the things that people have to pay for to get from you. But you shared some of that tonight, so I appreciate that value. But go ahead. Final thoughts, and how can they find you?
Final thoughts. Gosh, I feel like these panels are so fun. These conversations do need to be had amongst men and women more often. Very much so appreciate the commentary from everybody here. And also it's just really refreshing to hear men have conversations around being intentional with women. And I think that that's something that a lot of women don't hear, honestly. So I'm just thrilled to be here. So you can find me on TikTok at SheBreadwins. That's my main platform. I'm on Instagram with my first name, last name, but most of my content is on the talk. So. All
right. Thank you so much, Joanna, for coming back again. I'll pass it to Itaisa. Good to have you. Good to see you again. And thank you for jumping on virtually. How can they takeaways and how can they find you, Itaisa?
Very appreciative to be here in this podcast. So thanks for having me back. I felt like I learned a lot. So thank you for all being my mentors tonight. That was absolute value that I took back tonight. But I think in terms of questions, definitely going to start asking those questions and be more prepared the next time around when I do get open for dating again, whenever that happens. But they can find me at Itaisa Sigura on Facebook, It4is4 on Instagram. And again, thank you so much.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you so much, Itaisa. Thank you for jumping on again. Pass it to the fellas real quick. Final thoughts. And how can they find you? Jerk, go ahead.
Yeah, so you guys can find me. Definitely, we're over here on every Thursday. So yeah, pull up. Y'all got questions. We try to have like good conversations, like you guys said. So definitely a dope conversation tonight. I think you guys are some great females. Y'all brought a lot of insight. Always Paulo, Dame, Will, and Manic. You guys always have great perspectives too. So I always, learn in each episode also. You can find me on the Manic Sophistication channel. That's where me and Manic, we do like different review breakdowns. And then also, we go to Dame's channel. Can I Get Some Podcasts on Tuesdays? Sorry if I like messed up your plug, Dame, but definitely he's got a real good conversation and platform also. So check them all out. And y'all can't follow Paulo anywhere but here. So if you want that premiere view of Paulo, tune in on Thursdays.
You just did it for everyone.
Yeah.
We just conclude the podcast right now. But Damien, again, thank you for jumping on. Final thoughts, and how can they find you, Damien?
Yeah, it was a great show. I think the women were phenomenal. I think this was always a very important topic. I think I like the way it naturally progressed from like the things men are due to like the communication aspect of it, because I think that's the thing that happens that affect a significant amount of relationships, and it could. I think a lot of people can get out of get a lot out of it. But yeah, if you want to follow me on IG, it's Can I Get Some Podcast. That's my IG handle. I do have a show called Can I Get Some Podcast, like my man Jerk said. I do every Tuesday at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. We talk about the same kind of stuff: politics, relationships, and pop culture, what have you. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, I just have to say, I'm not saying this as being biased or anything, but I think Damien is one of the best conversationalists when it comes to navigating these types of conversations. So definitely check out his podcast.
That's right.
Can I Get to Some Podcasts on
Thank
Tuesday?
you, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Damien. Paulo, as always, thank you for jumping on. Final thoughts, and they'll see you only here. Okay.
Yeah. Look, I wasn't meant to jump on, and I'm sort of being naughty right now, but I had to sort of jump on and back my fellow caveman Damien earlier on. These conversations are absolutely of value, and it is for two things. We've got Joanna, who is dealing with the realities of the other sides of our plight, who's dealing with women and divorces at a certain bracket. And the reason why that's important is that it actually takes away the assumptions that we have about certain topic, especially when it comes to relationship. We're able to have that dialogue, and it presents not only for us an ability to be somewhat regulated in our bias, but also for women in general too, that it provides you information. So I think these are sort of conversations, and the people being involved in this conversation is one of great value. That people, if we get away from the whole emotionally engage in what's being presented, I think people would take this podcast as one that should be insightful. Ladies, it's been an absolute pleasure having the conversation here tonight, and to the fellas, Jerk and Damien, especially Manic. I love these because we get to push back on a lot of the things we disagree on in a way that we can show what truly is when it comes to comms. And well, again, it's always a pleasure to come on, and for you to allow me to continuously shout shit on your platform is one that I thoroughly enjoy. So thank you for having me.
No worries. Thank you so much, Paulo Festa. Ladies, thank you so much for your time. Everybody in the live chat, a lot of you guys watched the entire stream. I was active the entire time, so thank you so much for you guys. And don't forget, the best way to support the channel is to smash that like, subscribe button real quick, and so that you get notification we do go live next time. But everybody, you guys have a good night. Thank you so much for your time. Peace, y'all. Peace. Have a good night, y'all.